All right. I would like to call to order the January 29th, 2026 work session at 6:30 p.m. here in the Assembly Chambers. We will start the evening off with citizens' comments. For those who wish to call in, the local number is 907-486-3231. Toll free is 1-855-492-9202. Please turn off your radio or any listening device to prevent feedback. For those in the room who wish to speak under citizens' comments, please come up to the podium and sign in. Turn on the microphone, make sure the green light is on before speaking, and speak directly into the mic. State your name for the record, address all remarks to the assembly as a whole and not any member thereof. And as a reminder, for work sessions, we only have citizens' comment at the front end of the work session. There won't be an opportunity at the end. Do we have any calls, Nova? No. All right, thank you. Yes, please.
We're now answering a call from the queue.
Good evening, Assembly Work Session. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and Assembly members. My name is Corey Grawn, and I serve as the Vice President of the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I truly appreciate the work you do on behalf of our community and the time you've given us this evening. I also want to express my support for Melissa, who will be doing a presentation later on tonight, and she will be providing you with some meaningful updates that I believe you'll find her information to be both timely and worthwhile. As many of you know, the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation is focused on strengthening Kodiak's economy, supporting sustainable growth, and helping ensure that Kodiak remains a thriving place to live, work, and invest for generations to come. Recently, our board approved a new strategic plan which will guide our efforts moving forward and help ensure that our work continues to align with the priorities of the borough and the broader community. One of the most urgent areas we've been focused on is housing. Tonight, I'm here to share that the KEDC has completed our housing action plan, and we believe it provides a practical roadmap towards addressing one of Kodiak's most pressing challenges. But we also recognize that meaningful progress will require collaboration, and more importantly, partnerships. With that in mind, I want to respectfully suggest that the time may be right for Kodiak to consider a stronger partnership between the borough and the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation, not only in coordination, but also in financial support. KEDC is actively working to advance initiatives that directly benefit the community, and we believe that the borough has an opportunity to be a key partner in helping support and invest in those efforts. So my question tonight is, how can we begin that discussion? What would be the best path forward to explore the borough's role as a financial partner and supporting KEDC's economic development initiatives, including the implementation of the housing solutions? Again, I appreciate all of you and the time you put into serving this community, and look forward to 2026 as a prosperous year for Kodiak. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Appreciate your thoughts, Mr. Grahn.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Assembly. My name is Ryan Sherritt, and I stand before you guys tonight to talk about the elimination or the discussion of MAPTR and how important MAPTR is as a stopping point for taxation to citizens. MAPTR was put in place to give us a maximum allowable tax rate, and we're discussing removing that now, really on the heels of a school crisis. If we weren't in a deficit or talking about the education system, we probably wouldn't be discussing MAPTR. So I would implore you guys to look at the school district for financial accountability, look at a declining student population. As you guys discuss MAPTR and its importance, you should be ecstatic that we actually have a ceiling in place as we start looking at the financial outflow that the community is going to have specifically to try and support the school district. I understand all of everybody's connections to the school district, and this is probably an unpopular conversation, but this is my first time in public in 151 days, and this is how important it is to me. So please consider having a stopgap in place, leaving it in place. while we try to gather as a community for responsible and physical awareness for the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherritt.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a call.
We're now answering a call from the queue.
Good evening, Assembly meeting. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Tanya Kitka.
Go ahead.
I'm a lifelong resident. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a lifelong resident of the Kodiak Island Borough. I grew up in Uzinki, and then I've been living in Kodiak for my adult life. I see on the agenda for today that you have MAPTR, or the Maximum Allowable Property Tax Revenue, on for discussion. I'd also like to let you know my support for that ordinance and to urge you to not consider the possibility of removing MAPTR. I believe that what this ordinance does is critical to keeping property taxes in check for residents of our island and to help ensure the affordability of being able to live and raise our families here. Without MAPTR in place, property seeing rises in value, much in part due to U.S.-wide economic influences and housing trends that come from outside of our island community and don't reflect our own economic increases necessarily, would see a much more drastic rise in their property tax bills from the borough. MAPTR ensures that the increase of our individual property taxes from one year to the next will not be as much of a shock nor hit to the wallet or spending ability of the average person living here. I think it's essential that as Borough Assembly members who are looking to fund our services and school as much as possible, that you look to the whole picture and not just a portion of it. The decline in our population, anecdotally from many residents who have moved off island, has been chalked down to the rising increase of cost of living. Taking away MAPTR would exacerbate this problem and makes home ownership even more out of reach or unattainable, which only encourages more young families moving off island. Kodiak Island Borough Assembly lowered the mill rate this last year to 9.25, in part due to the need to comply with the property tax revenue allowable by MAPTR to be collected. My own overall tax bill still went up because the value of our home went up, but without MAPTR in place and the pressure to lower the mill rate to ensure that the maximum tax collected is following that ordinance, it would have been much more inflated. Property taxes in Kodiak are already much higher than in similar communities. For example, my husband's family in Sitka pays nearly half of what we do for a similarly valued home, with their mill rate being capped at 5 mills, whereas Kodiak is currently lowered down to 9.25. So ultimately, I hope that each of you will support the continuance of MAPTR as a means of safeguarding our community's affordability of living in Kodiak. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have any more phone calls? Nope. All right.
We're now answering a call from the queue.
Good evening, Assembly meeting. Please state your name for the record.
Dan Rohr.
Go ahead, Dan.
Hello. Thank you for taking the call, Mayor and Assembly. I just wanted to comment in regards to 3 items. So I'll do it quickly. Obviously, you have a lot on your agenda tonight. First one is paving of Otmaloy Road. Obviously, this has been out there for decades now, and it's time to act on it. We got it close a couple of times in the past, but just never seemed to be able to get it across the finish line. So looking forward to you getting that moved ahead. Assembly member absences. I think if you look at KEA's policies, they have a much more nuanced policy than we do that talks specifically about how many consecutive absences, and then in the cases of emergencies, there is the ability for their board to extend the number of absences allowed to due to medical and things of that nature. Anyways, I think it is time to look at that. The main reason I called in is the maximum allowable tax, property tax. I would like to encourage you to keep it on there for at least one more year and not vote it off. I think it helps give you a reason for not continuing to increase the amount of money going to the Kodiak Island Borough School District. If you look at the total amount of money Kodiak Island Borough School District is getting, they would make the argument, of course, that that's been fairly flat. But what you really need to do is divide it by the number of total students in the Kodiak Island Borough School District and see how much that number skyrocketed. So the amount per student is really, really increased from the borough's allocation. So anyways, my encouragement would be keep the maximum allowable tax there and at least for one more year, and let's see what it does. And anyways, I'll be at your next meeting where you discuss it. Apologize for doing it over the phone. I'm out of town. So anyways, again, thank you for your time and good luck with your meeting tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Rohr.
Thank you.
Would anyone in the room like to make a public comment? Come on up.
Good evening, Assembly. My name is Matt Van Dale. I'm a resident of Otmaloy, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that project tonight. I definitely appreciate the interest and the willingness of the new engineering firm to speak directly to some of the private landowners along that way and some of the impacts that might come from that. However, the main thing that I want to discuss is, if my memory serves, this is now the third time that Paving Otmaloy has come before the Assembly. A few things in the project seem to have changed. I believe it was in 2021 when the Assembly voted this down. One of the reasons was that it had gone from 2 inches of asphalt up to 2.5 inches, but even that 2.5 inches may have not been sufficient for the underlayment at Otmaloy. The other thing that I feel like has really changed with this project is that affordability is becoming much more difficult. It's getting much harder to get housing going. We now have a school closure and our population is declining. And I am concerned about the tax burden that paving this road and then having it be in Service District 1 would shoulder, and also Borough residents as a whole. But I'd like to get a lot more information. If this project does go forward, I'm going to get a lot more engaged, because it's difficult to have an objective opinion or assessment of it right now without having more information. But that's what I have for Otmaloy. I also want to have a quick shout out to KRAA. I saw that they're doing a presentation tonight. Look forward to seeing that. They've been very, very important partners for me in my day job at Shunak as a natural resources director in dealing with our invasive crayfish threat and also rehabilitation of our salmon stocks around the archipelago. So thank you for your time. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Vandale. Okay.
You are now answering a call from the queue.
Good evening, Assembly Work Session. Please state your name for the record.
Brenda Schwantes.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Good evening. Yes, hello. I am also calling regarding mill rate property taxes, just with concerns, just getting a little bit harder and harder to live in Kodiak. And, you know, I hear a lot of, I work in a government agency, and I hear a lot about moving, which is concerning. So I would urge the Borough Assembly, you know, for the people you represent to really make our citizens a priority. You know, there's a lot of government waste, a little bit slow and inefficient as well. So if anything, you need to be looking after the citizens, keep them here, keep our kids in the school. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to lose funding as we lose students. So we need to make sure our citizens staying in Kodiak are supported. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schwantes. Anyone else like to make a comment? Thank you, Mr. Holm. Any other phone calls? Anyone else in the audience wish to make a comment?
Good afternoon or evening. Justin Thrawn. Have been out of the politics a little bit and keeping up on what's going on. I'm sure there's 20 million things going on. But luckily someone posted something on Facebook that the discussion of tax revenue and maximum allowable property tax was going to be talked about. If we keep taxing people, people are going to move out. And then when people want to move out, they're going to try to sell their house. But then people aren't going to want to buy it because they're going to know property taxes are through the roof. Everything, you name it, is through the roof. So then they're going to lower their house to try to sell their house. And it's just, I just envision this decline of housing prices going down so they can sell. Then once a house that's, $500,000 is now valued at, let's say, $450,000, now you're going to be even getting less taxes probably because people are going to want to get their house reassessed and be like, hey, look, you're taxing me for a $500,000 house, but I bought it for $400,000. And we can only, and you guys have houses too, you can only absorb so much. We got to start cutting things back. We got to start figuring out where we don't need to be spending money. And you guys have done pretty good. I think it was probably about a year ago talking about increasing the mill rate or something like that, and you guys held off on it. Don't quote me. I don't know if it was the mill rate. It's been a while. But you guys held off on increasing some kind of tax, property tax, and I appreciate that. But you guys got to hold on a little bit longer because we're getting beat up out there. Everything is through the roof, expensive, and I see if you guys increase the property taxes to the maximum allowable, people are going to move off the island. They're just going to be done. They're going to move, other people, I've heard other people, talking about moving to the lower states just because things are cheaper. And I don't think it's a good idea to keep increasing property taxes, especially to the maximum allowable. I don't know if looking, and I don't know what the rules are, is looking for property taxes, places that don't have to pay property taxes. I don't know if it's, some federal rule or whatnot, but I feel like everyone should participate, We're all one community. I pay taxes, you pay taxes. No one gets any discounts. If we all contribute, then we don't have to keep increasing property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrawn. Anyone else from the audience wish to make a comment? All right. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We appreciate it. So we will move on to the manager's comments. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteside. So we moved the manager's comments to right after public comment. So if there was something that we could address right away, we could. And so I just want to address MAPTR really quick. The discussion tonight for MAPTR and revenue is meant to be an educational piece on what MAPTR is. When I was on the assembly, it was Mater. Our finance director came in and told us about that, and it went right over my head. So we're trying to break things down so that everyone understands, the community and the assembly members, what MAPTR is, and then we're going to be going over our different revenue sources and then an average of what our revenue has been over the last 4 years. And yes, this will eventually get to a conversation about MAPTR and whether we can keep it or not keep it, but I don't think that was the discussion we were going to have tonight. It's just supposed to be an educational piece to explain what that is. Also, in public comment, there was a comment about the area-wide mill rate. That's actually 8.91 this year. It doesn't change the fact that your property taxes still went up, but it is 8.91. And there's also a comment about assessed values and other outside factors affecting ours. Our assessing methods, when you get your notice of value, that's all determined in-state by the state assessor. They determine the way that we have to assess homes across the state of Alaska. So everywhere in Alaska does it the same. Although if you're paying attention to the news, you'll see Anchorage changed the methodology and they got some 30% hits this year. So that's a pretty big conversation up in the big city. Okay, there's that. Now to the prepared comments. In staffing, I'm developing language positions and salary ranges that better reflect the work being done out at the landfill. Also working on developing a job description for a contracting officer. That's something the Assembly has expressed that they wanted. That's going to be most likely, if she wants to, Patricia moving into that job. The bear management plan, our plan is due to the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation tomorrow. The draft is complete and it's being reviewed for technical accuracy. The Northwest Managers Conference is meeting in Sitka this year at the end of March, beginning of April. I'm attending, hosting, speaking. I was elected as the president of the Alaska Municipal Managers Association in December, so that'll be something fun for me. The International City and Counties Managers Association conference I went to, one of the main things that I took away was the benefits of creating a multi-week Citizens Academy to help with educating the public on the processes of our municipalities. We're going to be running our first run of this in March of this year. The idea is to have a 5 to 6 week program that meets one night a week and covers different departments each week, and we're going to invite probably up to 25, max 30 people in, and then it'll be one department a week as we walk through our processes for people who are interested in learning about what's going on at the borough. The assessor and I have been participating in a work group that AML is sponsoring so we can discuss property tax topics such as assessment methods, nonprofits, charitable exemptions, etc. There are very similar comments from communities across the state, and this group is allowing us to learn best practices. Nate Root, the Alaska YMCA CEO, is in town. We're touring our community pool with him tomorrow so that we can, in the future, talk about partnering with YMCA or the possibility of partnering with YMCA to help reduce the expenses for our community pool. Speaking of swimming pools, and yes, I did put these 2 items in a row just so I could say that. The city of Kodiak alerted staff to a high water usage amount this morning. On this building, staff located a leak under the kitchen sink in the building at 610 Egan Way, which is the old Red Cross building right across the street that way. The cleanup started this morning and continued until late this afternoon. We had a lot of water run through that building over the last 10 days. So we're working on getting that cleaned up. I attended the January Board of Directors meeting in Anchorage last week. Meeting highlights are attached to the report tonight. For that committee, I'm on the Long Range Planning Committee, and I'm the board member attached to the Information Education Committee. If you look at those notes online, you'll see a link to a book. If you're familiar with the author Tim Crestina, he's the one that does the working boats, and it's kind of the side cartoon picture of fishing boats. He's doing a boat just for the council that is on fuel cleanup, so oil tankers and tugboats and barges, and it's kind of a neat project. We'll get a bunch of copies here for the borough. Our current collective bargaining agreement expires on June 30th. We're going to start negotiations with them in March of 26. For current recruitments, we offered a treatment plant operator job. They accepted and started to work today. We have offered and had a job accepted for a treatment plant operator trainee, and we offered and had accepted verbally, but we need it in writing for a temporary laborer. So we're getting some new employees on board, which is always great. In finance, the foreclosure process is started for delinquent 2025 taxes. The annual newspaper publication of the delinquent list is set to begin on or around February 20th. The last day to pay amounts in order to be in that publication is February 2nd. You can call the finance office at 486-9324 for a payoff amount. We have a lot of work still going on in the property assessment and taxation implementation project with Tyler. Our deadlines are coming up very quickly for notice of values to get sent out, so I feel like our feet are in the flame a little bit on that project. In community development, the staff has updated the Plan 2045 website to add the results of the 2 economic development surveys. In addition, there's surveys for arts, culture, and history that are live. The link is there. Those are open until Monday, February 2nd. Parks and Rec met this week. The committee discussed the CIP process for fiscal year 27 and reviewed the final results of Plan 2045 Trails Survey. In information technology, they're always working on system administration, fixing vulnerabilities for our systems, but one really neat thing they're doing this week is they're working with the Alutiiq Museum on adding an interactive historic places feature to the borough's map center. So just like you can go in and click and find out our trail system by adding a layer, you're going to be able to go in and find our historic places as well. In assessing, we have 64 senior citizens and 13 disabled veterans who did not file their exemptions on time. We've had 4 people file late. SEMA put a big thing in there about Tyler. I think the most important part for the community is the next session on the notice of values. instead of getting your letter from the borough for your notice of value, this year it will be a postcard. There's a picture in the packet tonight of what the front and back of that will look like. That is not a tax bill, that's just your assessed value, and then there's a time for you to come in and talk to the assessing department if you think that your property was not assessed correctly. Those notice of values are going to be mailed on February 27th. In engineering and facilities, there's a lot of information in there, but I will just let you know that we are working with our term architect for a cost estimate proposal to get that small-scale destructive testing done over at the pool in that room that the lifeguards use. We have our industrial pumps that I feel like we've been counting down for like 9 months, actually made it to the island yesterday. They're here. We had some troubles getting a really long trailer down the hill behind the KFRC, but they got moved to a box truck, and we're getting them there, and so that work will start tomorrow. The elevator project over at the middle school is done. We just need the state of Alaska inspector to check it out the first week of February, and we didn't get all the parts we should have for the hospital elevators, but they are en route, and we'll be able to start it over there. Also, so there's a Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council highlights, and then behind that is our projects office report for the month of January. And you can see on the first page of that is a screenshot of the dashboard that our project manager, Cody Allen, created after the discussion last week and a desire for more information on projects and where we were. He has used Excel and then another program that he is used to use, and he can click on anything that you want and get you numbers on any project that we're working on. So it's really impressive. So once we get that completely updated and the numbers verified, that's something we'll be able to put online, and the public will have access to it as well. So I think it'll add another layer of transparency. And with that, I am ready for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Amy? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda items. The first item on our agenda is the Malloy Way rehabilitation presentation to the Assembly. Mr. Will Webb is the design consultant who will be presenting some info for us. Mr. Webb.
So I'm going to intercede. I'm the design group manager for Will Webb.
Yep.
Probably a design group chief for Southwest.
All right. Thank you all for giving us some time tonight to talk about Malloy Way. I believe we were here, the project was before you in March to talk about some alternatives, and we've developed that chosen alternative more fully and want to provide an update as to where we're at. In case anyone's unaware, Malloy is north of the city, up by the former North Star Elementary. We're looking at the entire length of the corridor from Menasha Bay to Rezanoff, as well as the connection to the school building. As Jim mentioned, he's the department, the DOT project manager. I'm the consultant project manager. We've got a handful of folks that came into town to have our public meeting yesterday to talk with property owners and generally just kind of become that much more familiar with the area and everyone's concerns. Overall project purpose is we want to enhance safety for the folks that are out there. We've got a lot of curves on the road that you can't really see around in time to safely stop, so our sight distance is inadequate. We're working on fixing that. We want to improve the driving surface. You know, while we were out there today, they were grading to get rid of the potholes and whatnot, so paving it will eliminate that need. We want to provide the pedestrian access throughout the corridor for now the children going to the bus stops. And then drainage is, of course, a big thing in Kodiak everywhere, but especially along here to help the road last longer. Right now, it's 25 mile per hour speed limit. We're not planning to change that. We've got about 380 cars per day out there, and then the overall length is 3/4 of a mile. So our plan for the road is to like I said, is to pave the road. We'll reconstruct the structural section, the soil and the gravel beneath the pavement. We'll put in pavement. We are planning on 10-foot lanes, 4-foot shoulders on both sides, and then a 5-foot asphalt sidewalk on the south side of the road. We are also planning to include rolled curb and gutter, so instead of the 6-inch high, it's 2 to 4 inches, and that was at the request of Borough Maintenance to help make it a little easier to plow. But that also gives us separation between the pedestrian realm and the traffic. And then we also have ditching to keep the water away from the road and help the pavement last longer. So here's this overview of the project. The greenish color is the paved road, the blue is the sidewalk, and like I said, we're going from one end to the other. We will be paving the parking lot for the park down at the west end, and then extending that pavement over to North Star Elementary building. This graphic also depicts where our work will extend beyond the right-of-way. The majority of that is to accommodate driveways and to get those regraded to match current standards, but we do have some areas where the side slopes will be regraded out beyond property as well. One of the biggest change I would say that we're planning for the corridor is right here at Peninsula Road. Right there's kind of a S curve there, it goes down into a gully. It's difficult to see in kind of a questionable situation. We're planning to straighten out those curves, so move the road south a little bit there, as well as bring it up as it goes through so it won't go down quite as far. The idea being that you'll actually be able to see who's coming around the corner, and it clarifies how the intersection there at Peninsula Road works. Peninsula is the one that comes in off the left side there. Right now, it's kind of unclear if you're going up Otmaloy, if the main way is to go Peninsula or to keep going on Otmaloy, so we want to get that straightened out. Let's see. The next place I want to talk about is this section off to the east end. It's probably the biggest change vertically. In general, we're trying to keep the existing profile so we're not to help limit our impacts overall. But we do have this stretch here on the east end. There's kind of a hill that comes up and goes down toward Rezanoff, and so we're going to flatten that out a little bit again to help with sight distance so you can see what's going on and help people better anticipate what's coming down the road. It's not very impactful, I don't think, for overall, but this is the largest grade change that we'll see. And then as part of this, there's a situation right now where there's 3 houses that share a driveway kind of down in a hole there. We're still working on how that arrangement's going to work exactly, but our current plan is a retaining wall and maintain essentially the existing configuration there, but we'll have to have a retaining wall to make that work. So that's a brief overview of what we're looking at doing for the project. This graphic shows where we're at with the process, and I know the project has been before you a number of times, but this is where we're at now. So we've gotten our preliminary design. That's what I've been able to share with you today and with the public yesterday. And that gives us enough information to move forward with the environmental studies and documentation, which is an important aspect of the federally funded project process. Concurrently with that, we started working with utilities. We had several meetings today with different utility folks around the community to figure out how we can work with them as we change the road and need to move their facilities. And then we also are starting the right-of-way process, which, as I'd mentioned, we've got some areas where we need to work outside the right-of-way, and then a lot of driveways we're going to have to work with the property owners on how we get those fixed up. So yeah, at the moment, environmental studies and documentation is the critical path, the key thing that we're working on, and then we'll move forward to advancing design and ultimately, continuing the project through to construction. Speaking of construction, we've got a couple of things I want to address. One is construction traffic control. As we go through the project, we've got a few cross culverts we need to replace, like the one in the picture. And so in those instances, we will need to close the road because they'll have to go across the road, but we'll be able to maintain the detour around Menashka and Rezanoff. But during the bulk of construction, we anticipate keeping traffic open, and at no time will people not be able to get home, except for maybe when they're getting their own driveway culvert installed. But all of those kind of activities will be coordinated with the specifically impacted property owners at the time. And then also as part of getting things constructed, of course, is cost. And right now, based on our preliminary designs and some of our estimates for the utilities, we're looking at a $14 to $16 million range. Process, or schedule-wise, we are in the first quarter of 2026, which is crazy, but as we go through that other graphic and work our way through the process, that basically dictates how our schedule pans out. And so we are in the middle of design, we're in the middle of environmental, and we're starting our utility agreements, and we'll be really starting our right-of-way here pretty soon. That all works out to getting us to what we call obligation, where we get authority from the feds to spend the money to put the project out to bid in late 2027, with construction expected in 2028. And that is where we're at with everything. With that, I assume you're able to ask questions, so we're here for that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Webb. Any questions from the Assembly? Go ahead, Ms. Roberts.
Thanks for coming in and talking to us tonight. Really appreciate it. You had a scheduled public open house yesterday, right?
Yes,
What
that's
was
correct.
the feedback that you were getting from citizens from that?
Yeah, we had a lot of folks come out, and it was great. I think a lot of the people that came out were neighbors and whatnot, so we had a lot of conversations about how the project would affect their driveways and in their front yards and whatnot. Overall, we heard people appreciative of the sidewalk, despite the changes at the school. They're looking forward to sidewalk, and then, of course, people were looking forward to seeing this project finally get completed. There's a few folks that asked about lighting specifically. We're not planning to do any lighting. That's what we've heard in the past. That's what we're continuing to go forward with, is to keep the existing handful of utility lights and go that route.
Thank you, Mr. Smiley, then Mr. Johnson.
There are two sets of seeps along Otmaloy. How are you going to handle those?
Yes, sir. Let me go back to I like this map. So there's two sets of seeps. One is on the west end near Lakeview Drive, where the road goes steeply down the hill toward Menashka. And then there's another one, I think it's east of Hilltop, but anyway, it says the road goes back down toward Rezanoff. And in those areas, we're planning a different soil section. So instead of regular road gravel, we'll use, they call it porous backfill, but it's basically a rockier mix with less sand. So then the water that's in there can flow through it more freely, and then it'll flow toward the ditches that we're going to be constructing and building deep enough so that it can catch that water and it can flow away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Smiley got my first question. Second one's not necessarily for you, but we do have DOT here. You talked about the road closures, and yep, understand that you can't cut a trench across the road without closing it. As someone who lives in that neighborhood, can we get some kind of agreement with DOT that they'll fix East Menashka Bay Road before we do closures? Because right now, in the dark, driving northbound on East Menashka will destroy tires due to the massive potholes that are there. And if we're closing that road, the ability to not bypass those potholes won't be an option. So it's just something, I know we're a long ways from construction, but something I wanted to put out there is that those potholes there on East Menashka are very treacherous, and in the dark especially. So if we're going to force all traffic that direction, getting those fixed before the project would be ideal.
So I can speak to this. So as the project develops, it's a little early right now. Mainly we're looking at constructability on a larger, what routes we would use for detours, that sort of thing. As we move in, they've had one submittal, basically a 30% design. It's pre-environmental. It's pretty detailed already for the alignment and location, and you can say they've established their tie-ins. As we move into through environmental and we move to it's like a 75% plan review, we'll be looking more at the constructability, staging, and phasing. So certainly we'd be looking at routes if we've established that we're going to be using, Menashka, you mentioned it. We would look at the condition. I probably would be talking to Amy quite a bit as far as when we're putting the the detour plans together and just the traffic control phasing and staging. So, that's totally reasonable expectation on your part.
Thank you. And I just wanted to also thank you for going back and revisiting this with the crosswalks. Or sidewalks, excuse me. I was a pretty big proponent of that, even with the school closing. That's actually increased the number of kids out on that road in the morning waiting for a bus. And we have had pedestrian or vehicle children accidents on that road. So I do appreciate you guys going back and adding that sidewalk back in.
Hey, Mr. Webb, I was curious, given we're a decade and beyond the initial approval now, what can we do as an assembly in Borough to help keep you on schedule?
That's an excellent question, and I'm actually going to pass that one back off to Jim since their DOT is in charge of kind of the overall process.
I think a lot of the onus is probably on the department as much as, I appreciate the desire to prod or keep us on course, but a lot of the onus is on myself. And I can say as a project manager, this is my first exposure, is to constant communication with where we are in the plan set, providing those certainly with Amy, checkpoints at each review as we get through it and updates on the schedule. You should be receiving those from us, and I'm going to be accountable for that. So however we decide, and I've had a pretty good relationship communicating with Amy as far as our progress. So
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you both for coming and presenting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, the second item on our agenda is Discover Kodiak quarterly presentation. Ms. Sabrina Hicks, Discover Kodiak's Executive Director, will present a verbal report. Ms. Hicks, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Assembly members, Borough Manager, and staff. My name is Sabrina Hicks, and I'm the Executive Director of Discover Kodiak. Thank you for the opportunity to provide our quarterly update for October through December. Before I begin, I want to sincerely thank those of you who have reached out to me, returned phone calls, responded to emails, or taken the time to share feedback and concerns. The communication is incredibly important to us. You were elected by the community to represent the Kodiak Island Borough, and in many ways you serve as one of our first and most direct connections to the community perspective. While we do plan to conduct a broader survey around tourism, listening to the Assembly is an essential first step. If something is important to you, it is most likely important to someone in our community. And we do want to take that into consideration when we decide on anything that we are working on. Open communication allows us to better understand concerns and work towards solutions together. This quarter was a period of focused planning, production, and preparation. Much of our work centered on strengthening how Discover Kodiak supports the tourism industry, refining how we communicate our role, ensuring that tourism in Kodiak is managed thoughtfully, sustainably, and in a way that reflects the community itself. As Discover Kodiak has grown, we have become increasingly aware that our organization is sometimes perceived as primarily serving cruise ship passengers. While we absolutely do welcome cruise visitors and support their experience while they are in Kodiak, they are not our primary audience. The majority of visitors engaging with Discover Kodiak are travelers who spend 3 to 7 days on the island. These visitors are here for outdoor recreation, cultural experiences, events, and deeper engagement within the community. They stay longer, contribute more directly to the local economy, and often return to Kodiak or recommend it to others. This quarter, we intentionally adjusted our messaging, planning efforts, and data collection to better reflect and serve these longer stay visitors. Our role is to foster tourism sustainably and ensure that tourism in Kodiak tells its own story, shaped by the community and reflective of Kodiak's values rather than outside expectations. During this quarter, Discover Kodiak welcomed 20 new members. This continued growth reflects confidence in our organization and strengthens our ability to support tourism-related businesses, nonprofits, and partners across the island. Since October, Discover Kodiak's office has been staffed by myself and Diana Mills, our member services. Together, we have continued supporting visitors, members, and partners while advancing several major projects. We are still actively seeking to fill the visitor services front desk position, and we invite anyone in the community who may be interested to come visit us, learn more about the role, see firsthand what we do. It is a fun environment and the work is meaningful. Supporting tourism means supporting local businesses, community pride, and economic vitality. Our largest project this quarter was the completion of the 2026 Visitor Guide, which is now officially complete. We produced 22,000 printed copies, along with the digital version, which is now available on our website. We recognize there are differing opinions on print versus digital materials, and we are intentional about offering both. Many visitors we see in our office are over the age of 40 and continue to prefer printed resources. While digital formats allow us to reach younger visitors, adapt content more efficiently, our Google Analytics is now directly linked to our visitors guide, allowing us to track how many people view it electronically and how they engage with that content. This helps guide future decisions around marketing and visitor resources. We are also just a few weeks from completing our downtown walking map, illustrated by Natasha Zahn. We are excited for these maps to be accessible throughout our members and downtown businesses by mid-April, ensuring they are widely available for both visitors and the community ahead of summer season. In addition, our meeting and conference landing page is nearing completion and will support business travel, group events, and longer stays, helping diversify tourism and extending economic impact. Our downtown wayfinding signage project. Earlier today, we met with Peter Briggs of Corvus Designs and reviewed our first draft and mock-up of the downtown wayfinding signage. The design is clean, clear, and informative, and we are hopeful it will create a cohesive look and feel throughout Kodiak Island. In the coming days, we will be forming a community stakeholder committee to help guide feedback and ensure this project serves both visitors and residents. We would also welcome participation from the borough. Our goal is to ensure the wayfinding system is intentional, useful, consistent across the island, and that it supports both navigation and local storytelling through cultural and historical information. In November, Kodiak hosted the Alaska Travel Industry Association board meeting, bringing tourism leaders from across the state to our community. Discover Kodiak helped host a meet and greet at Double Shovel Cidery, connecting ATIA board members with Discover Kodiak members. We invited city and borough and community leaders as well. Tourism in Alaska is interconnected. Destinations frequently support and recommend one another, and maintaining these statewide relationships helps ensure Kodiak remains visible, engaged, and part of a broader tourism conversations. This quarter, we launched a weekly blog published every Monday and shared across social media. We also shared our first public newsletter with more than 300 subscribers. The newsletter is open to anyone who would like to stay informed, and we encourage both residents and visitors to sign up at kodiak.org. Website engagement continues to show steady growth, driven largely by direct visits and organic search, indicating strong intentional interest in Kodiak as a destination. We continue to see increased interest in outdoor recreation and ecotourism. Through initiatives like our Adjust Your Altitude Hiking Challenge, visitors frequently ask about accessible trails, with Near Island consistently being one of the most visited areas. During the winter slow season, Discover Kodiak remained engaged locally by volunteering with the Beartown Market, supporting the Salvation Army, and partnering with the Maritime Museum during the Harbor of Lights Parade. As a follow-up from our last borough update, our Chocolate Lovers Fling fundraiser, benefiting Island Trails Network as this year's project, will take place on Friday, February 13th, and it is completely sold out. We have been extremely grateful for the strong community support and excited about the impact this event will have on visitor experience and outdoor recreation. As we move into the next quarter, our focus remains on launching key visitor resources, strengthening partnerships, refining data-driven decision-making, and continuing open communication with both the community and the Assembly. Thank you again for your time and your responsiveness and your willingness to engage. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that very detailed presentation. Any questions from Ms. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. Also to give a mea culpa. I have received a lot of flack, and probably deservedly so, for saying that I'm hostile to tourism. I don't always articulate my thoughts that well. What I should have said is I'm hostile to tourism-based economies. Tourism as a function of our economy is something that anyone, myself included, should absolutely support. I think the critical piece of what you said tonight is sustainable. And if we can work together in finding ways to make the growth of tourism in this community sustainable so that it's not negatively impacting things like home prices, then I absolutely support you. So look forward to our opportunity to continue working together. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Hicks. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the fourth item on the agenda is the Kodiak third item on the agenda is the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation update. Melissa Schoenweather, KEDC Executive Director, will provide us an update.
Good evening, Assembly members. I'm Melissa Schoenweather, and I serve as the Executive Director of Kodiak Economic Development Corporation, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight and speak with you. I want to begin by grounding this update in KEDC's mission and values, which will guide everything that I'm going to share this evening. KEDC leads collaborative efforts to strengthen and diversify our economy through innovation, workforce development, and sustainable practices that honor our island's culture, people, and natural resources. Our vision is a thriving, resilient Kodiak archipelago where local business and regional communities are connected to economic innovation and opportunity. I wish the whole thing was available on your screen. I don't know what's the matter. It's like half on and half. Okay, I hope so. Otherwise, you can see little bits at a time, which are still fun. We work in service to the community.
If I may, Melissa. Madam Clerk, we're having an issue with slides scrolling instead of advancing as a whole slide.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our vision is a resilient archipelago where local business and regional communities are all interconnected with each other, as well as to economic innovation and opportunity. So we work in service to the community. We convene and connect rather than duplicate. We prioritize transparency, practical results, and stewardship of public and private resources. These values shaped our work in 2025 and guide our direction moving forward. Tonight, I am going to cover 5 areas briefly for you in housing implementation, career and workforce development, economic diversification, primarily through mariculture, community-driven economic initiatives, which we're very excited and proud of, and organizational readiness. And then I'm going to share how this positions us for implementation in 2026. Housing has been the central focus of KEDC's work over the last year, primarily because it underpins nearly every other challenge our community faces. Housing affects workforce stability, public safety, healthcare, education, and whether families remain in Kodiak. In 2025, KEDC completed the Kodiak Housing Action Plan, in partnership with the University of Alaska's Center for Economic Development, and it was funded by a grant that we received from the Denali Commission. This plan was publicly informed by extensive outreach across the archipelago, including public forums, focus groups, employer meetings, and village visits. We intentionally engaged residents, tribal partners, employers, and community organizations to ensure that the plan reflects lived experience and local realities. The Housing Action Plan is organized primarily around 6 things: housing finance and tools, zoning land and use, development process and construction innovation, infrastructure and cost of building, investing in village housing, and leadership and coordination. We're very proud of the fact that one of the most important milestones in 2025 was the launch of the Kodiak Housing Dashboard. This public-facing tool brings data, timelines, and progress updates into one accessible place, which is found at kodiakedc.com/HAP TAC dashboard. You can easily navigate it on our top of our menu, all the way to the right, click on, and it'll drop down in the menu. This public-facing tool is a strong way to allow residents and decision makers to work from the same information and keeps housing conversations focused on facts and solutions. It's also worth noting that we update this quarterly and yearly based on information that is updated at the state level as well as local. In the fourth quarter, KDC reconvened our Housing Steering Committee to move from planning into implementation. The committee shifted from a planning body into a coordinated working group focused on early achievable priorities. These priorities include accessory dwelling units, short-term rental oversight, housing funding tools, and coordination across jurisdictions. Village housing remains a central focus with continued outreach to tribal governments and village leaders to ensure regional representation as implementation moves forward. As a part of the implementation, KEDC is supporting the development of several housing-related policy initiatives for consideration by the city and the borough. These include accessory dwelling unit regulations, short-term rental policies, and strategies to increase funding and feasibility for market-rate housing development. Together, these efforts aim to increase the quality, quantity, and affordability of housing across our island. It's important that we note that KEDC's role is to convene partners, organize information, and keep momentum moving between meetings so that the plans turn into action. That coordination is essential as housing work becomes more complex and implement focused. Something we're very excited about is the continuation of workforce development, which is another core priority in KEDC's strategic plan and closely tied to housing and economic stability. Employers across Kodiak continue to share the same concern. They are struggling to hire and retain workers. Housing is a part of that challenge, but so is the need for clearer, more connected pathways between education, training, and employment. KEDC's role in workforce development is not to replace existing programs, but is to convene partners, identify gaps, and help align efforts so students, job seekers, and employers are not navigating disjointed and disconnected systems. KEDC has held foundational meetings and worked with partners including Job Center, CANA, T3 Alaska, and the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development. Together, we are strengthening what we are currently calling Career Connections, which is a coordinated approach that builds on existing resources and focuses on practical outcomes. This work aims to improve alignment, helping employers communicate workforce needs more clearly, supporting students and job seekers as they move from awareness to training to real employment locally here in Kodiak, and ensuring that workforce initiatives connect meaningfully to housing, industry needs, and long-term economic vitality. Workforce development is a regional issue, and coordinating across systems benefit the entire Kodiak archipelago, which means that we are focused on the villages being included as well. Alongside housing and workforce development, KEDC continued advancing economic diversification through mariculture development. In 2025, engineering work for a multi-use mariculture processing facility moved towards a shovel-ready status, supported by statewide investment. This represents a significant step forward from an earlier concept level work and positions Kodiak for future decision-making and investment. KEDC partnered with the University of Alaska Center for Economic Development to complete a business plan and financial model for this facility. This work helps reduce risk and ensures that future decisions are grounded in operation and market realities. In collaboration with farmers, we advanced an at-sea processing feasibility analysis to explore how a mobile processing facility could support expanding kelp farming to remote locations. We also began developing a mariculture startup development guide to support new entrepreneurs entering this industry. Work is underway on a feasibility and working model for a Gibson Cove campus to support long-term planning and identify financial viable uses that align with community values, economic opportunity, and public access. Together, these efforts strengthen local capacity and support Kodiak's long-term economic resilience. Community-driven economic development remains a core part of KEDC's approach. KEDC secured a grant through the Rural Community Assistance Corporation, RCAC's, Building Rural Economies program to train and support local community members in developing and leading place-based economic initiatives, what we refer to as value chains. These efforts focus on identifying local projects, and these projects are identified by community members that have an interest in them to strengthen quality of life, support businesses, and build long-term economic capacity at a grassroots level. Through the Recharge Our Community's Economy initiative, 5 value chains were put forth, with 4 advancing, which was and are walkability, housing, work in business support, and seafood market development. Each value chain reflects local leadership and practical action. KEDC and RCAC provide facilitation, technical assistance, and project management to keep this work moving forward in a coordinated way. We also do the legwork to support these value chains by looking for grants and other mechanisms of financial support for the work that they want to see move forward. In December 2025, KEDC Board of Directors adopted the 2026-2027 strategic plan. This plan focuses on implementation, accountability, and transparency. It reinforces our commitment to service, partnership, and stewardship, and clearly defines where KEDC will concentrate its time and resources. As we move into 2026, KEDC's focus on implementation, including housing policy work, which is underway, workforce coordination, which we are strengthening, mariculture projects, which are advancing towards readiness and completion, community-driven initiatives, which continue to build momentum. Much of this work directly supports borough priorities relating to housing, workforce stability, economic resilience, and regional coordination. It also depends on sustained facilitation and partnerships to remain effective. KEDC values its relationship with the Kodiak Island Borough, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue aligning our work with regional needs and responsibilities. Thank you for your time this evening, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Any assembly questions? Mr. Johnson.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Really appreciate the presentation. It's great to see the growth that's happened within KEDC in the last year and a half. I'm biased. I participated in the housing group, and I know the work that went in. One thing I think, speaking for myself as an assembly member, I routinely confess my ignorance. You hear ideas, and I don't know which ones are good ideas and which ones are bad ideas. For example, some communities have offered a property tax rebate for homeowners. I thought, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that here, and we can, incentivize homeownership. Well, then, I went and found that some peer-reviewed research that shows that that doesn't do anything to increase homeownership. So what I'm saying is, as we seek to move from the planning to the action stages on this, I think what we could really benefit from is some tried and true methods for what can we do as a governing body to improve access to housing in this community. Is there best practices that have been implemented in other rural communities that have resulted in the development of new and affordable housing? Does that look like, tax rebates during construction? I don't know. And that's where I think we could greatly benefit from the expertise that's being developed at KEDC. Thank you.
On that note, I would like to remind everyone that on our website, for you all as well as the public in general, the Housing Action Plan in its completion is available to download. It has data very similar to what you're asking for, as well as throughout the state, based on other communities that are our size, and then also based specifically on our community. So I encourage all of you, if you haven't yet downloaded it, and if you don't want to print it out, I do have some printed copies I'm happy to deliver to you.
I have a question. Mr. Gron weighed in during citizens' comments and mentioned similar, partnering up for housing initiatives. I won't ask that question again, but I am curious what that looks like as far as tangible action items the Assembly can take on a site, in addition to releasing land for development for housing. I'd be curious to know what that is as well. But one thing Mr. Gron said during his comment that certainly perked my interest was requesting financial support. Could you expand on that, and what would that entail?
Thank you for this opportunity. Tonight, my focus was to initiate passing on information to you all and inviting you all to utilize the website and the tools that we have there to come and be part of the Housing Steering Committee if that's of interest in the value chains, and to spend more time learning about us. Specifics for what we would want as a relationship and for funding would be something I would be very happy to come back again and share more with you, and give you some more information on what that could look like.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. The reason I ask is we are entering the budget cycle. So without having some sort of idea on what KDC had in mind, the more lead time, the better, is my suggestion.
Okay, so yes, tonight was, for me, it was about sharing our work and clarifying roles. But looking ahead, we do see how there is value in how the borough might participate with a sustaining role in our coordination. So I would be happy to come back and give more information on that as well.
Thank you. Amy, did you want to expand on that?
Well, I was just going to say that a clear funding opportunity would be nonprofit funding, which KDC hasn't participated in the last couple of years, so that's one option. And then I'm assuming they're going to want more than that level, so I think Assemblymember Whiteside is right on that you'll have, please let us know. And an ex officio on this board, and Mr. Johnson's wife is on the board. So the information eventually flows through to us, but I think it would be very helpful if there was a specific ask that the Assembly could discuss in the near future.
Yeah, and we have not in the past come forth to ask for the grants. We see that the work that we would do would be probably categorized a little bit differently in the same way we're contracted with the city, not looking at those nonprofit grants. We see that there are many other nonprofits in the community that could benefit from those, where the work that we do would be slightly different.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley.
You mentioned ADUs. What we've found is that ADUs end up being Airbnbs, and they were originally sold as an idea for young families or for in-laws, and then they turn out to be occupied only from May until September. How are you going to control that kind of thing, or have you thought about trying to restrict the use of people's ADUs?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. So the Housing Steering Committee is looking at how and why perhaps there wasn't as much support for ADUs, because when we spoke with people in the communities and villages, it seemed like the pushback for not having support was that they did not seem to have enough information. They thought, very similar to what you've suggested, that ADUs become Airbnbs. Some of the people we spoke with shared that they would use them for different means, but we're not here to so much put forth how do we make more ADUs. What we've noticed is they're already there, and one of the things that probably should be considered is how do we bring them up and have a type of leveling agent or some type of oversight over the ones that are already here. And then based on what the Housing Steering Committee has talked about, what are some policies that we should probably look to explain better and educate the public on? I think that's part of it. We heard from a lot of people that they don't understand a lot of the concepts and the language that surrounds housing. Even within our Housing Steering Committee, terms like STRs and ADUs, we need to make the language and the understanding around these things a bit more approachable. And when we do that, I think it allows the people who were trying to get on side, people who could possibly build an ADU, to understand the real value behind it and understand how turning it into an Airbnb isn't as beneficial as it could be for a sustained living quarters. So on that note, I think part of the thing that we do that isn't maybe as fancy or as fun, but it's the long really dig in and try to educate the public and bring awareness, listen to what their questions are, and try to figure out what more information do they need, what questions do they have for you all. We are going to draft some policies to put forth about ADUs to the Housing Steering Committee. And again, we welcome participation from you all to be part of that and to continue to give us insight and help direct it. It is not for KEDC to direct and push forward policies. It's our job to listen to all sides and help create something out of that.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, Ms. Schoenweather. Appreciate your time. Okay, moving on to the fourth item of the agenda is Kodiak Regional Aquaculture Association, KRAA presentation. Ms. Tina Fairbanks, the Executive Director, will present some information. Whenever you're ready, please.
There we go. You're going to have to forgive me. I forgot my speaking notes, so I'm going to wing it. But I've talked about these things for a lot of years, and this one in particular for almost 8 years. In fact, the last time I came and spoke to the borough, it was about almost exactly the same proposal that I'm talking to you primarily about today. This is a long-standing fight. It's one that we've defeated multiple times, and yet it keeps coming back to haunt us. So without a lot of change in the contentions of the proposers, the information that they have to offer, or really the grounds for which they offer it, or the solutions they think it will achieve. So ultimately, I'm going to start. I provided a bunch of information that's in your packet. Working on this presentation kind of last minute. It's just starts out with an overview of the Aquaculture Association, dives a little bit into some more information about KRAA. Some of you are probably more familiar with KRAA than others. And then gets a little bit into the proposals themselves and the concerns we have about the proposals and the reasons that we think that they're really not supportable, and we hope that the Assembly will support KRAA in opposing the proposals formally through a resolution or letter of support. So the nonprofit program for hatcheries in Alaska is set up to have regional associations, but there are also independent private nonprofits within those regions. So there are presently 9 associations throughout the regions. The programs themselves were designed in response to periods of low abundance of salmon, and ultimately the programs themselves are supposed to support the overall harvest opportunity during periods of low abundance, but not supplant it. And so what we've seen over time is that providing opportunity where it didn't originally exist, creating opportunity, supports the programs in periods of low abundance and high, provides protective effects for wild stocks, and promotes the sustainability of the salmon fisheries of coastal Alaska overall. So the history of the aquaculture programs in the state of Alaska began about the same time as limited entry in 1973. The programs were put in statute in 1974, so a couple years ago the program saw 50 years of operation of salmon hatcheries in coastal Alaska. And in many of those years, particularly the last 25 to 30, there have been concerns about the science and the principles that guide the programs. So more and more in the last few years in particular, we've been at the Board of Fish, engaged in public process. But if you look at the numbers, if you look at the economics, and you take a hard look at the science, it's easy to see that when the hatchery programs were put in place, and began producing salmon for the common property fisheries of Alaska, there was an overall increase in harvest opportunity in the state of Alaska. The onset of the programs did accompany an overall increase in wild stock salmon abundance as well. So the two things have gone hand in hand. But you can see that those increases are steady and long-term. So the hatchery programs in the state of Alaska are a public-private partnership. Most of a good portion of the hatcheries are owned by the state of the hatchery. The 2 hatcheries that are operated here in Kodiak are both owned by the state of Alaska and operated by KRAA. And so each of the programs in a region are designed not to just benefit commercial fisheries, but also sport, subsistence, and personal use fisheries where they exist. So KRAA's portfolio, as I'll talk about a little bit later, does include both sport and subsistence targeted fisheries that benefit a broad array of users in Kodiak proper and in nearby villages. So in addition to providing those opportunities, the aquaculture associations and their programs are engaged in a fairly robust permitting and public process. You can engage in resource decisions related to hatchery operations through regional planning teams. The regional planning teams are responsible for making recommendations to the Commissioner of the Department of Fish and Game related to enhancement and planning in each region. So those meetings are publicly announced. They're accessible by the public, and anyone can participate at any time. In addition, where we have a board of directors at KRAA, our meetings are open to the public. We don't necessarily post them anywhere besides our website, but we do invite the participation of members of the public at our meetings. And then, of course, as in this instance, occasionally there are hatchery committee meetings that are non-regulatory, and occasionally also proposals that engage the hatchery programs in terms of their permits and production. So hatchery programs are, as I said, scattered all throughout South Central and Southeast Alaska. You can see the various organizations and how their hatcheries and programs are distributed. And then in terms of the broader economic impact of the private nonprofit hatchery programs in the state of Alaska, these are some of the more recent figures that we have engaged with formerly the McDowell Group to provide information on the total economic output of the programs, as well as our combined ex-vessel value contribution, and to take a look at how the dollars that are generated by the aquaculture associations flow through Alaskan communities, providing jobs and revenue both directly and indirectly. So altogether, it's a fairly significant contribution to the salmon fisheries of Alaska. In Kodiak, our footprint is a little smaller. We've chosen to keep our programs fairly conservative and small here in Alaska, but we're still part of this larger group that is being targeted by various proposals at the level of the Board of Fish. So this is an estimate of the overall ex-vessel value that's contributed by hatchery programs in the state of Alaska. This year in Kodiak, KRAA contributed about 28% of the ex-vessel value to the Kodiak salmon fisheries. So, and for the associations, in the short term, really our priorities are to maintain the programs that we have, to work with department to be able to collect the kind of data and information that's necessary to sustain our programs and make sure that they're defensible, and to coordinate with the department through the regulatory structure on permitting and regulatory decision making. So that brings us to KRAA. KRAA is a small association. We were formed in 1983, which is a little bit behind the curve. So we just recently celebrated just over 40 years of operation here in Kodiak. KRAA is governed by a 15-member board of directors who have representatives for various user groups and gear types, for both the commercial, sport, subsistence, and also processing and marketing sectors. So our overall operations include the 2 hatchery facilities that we operate in cooperation and under contract with the state of Alaska, as well as our research and monitoring group that provides fishery monitoring, smolt immigration. They collect and process scale and otolith data. We conduct limnology across the Kodiak archipelago on sockeye nursery lakes, and then do a variety of other water quality monitoring and education and outreach activities. So just in terms of what KRAA contributes to the salmon fisheries Kodiak management area, I think I provided this information to you in the preliminary information you received, but what I didn't manage to capture in that is what these proposals that are at the level of the Board of Fish and are targeting KRAA programs, what the loss of that production would mean in Kodiak. And so, and again, I don't have all of my proper notes, but for 2025, rather than 26.3% of the pink salmon harvested and 37.1% of the chum salmon harvested, you can remove right off the top about 2.5 million pink salmon and about 68,000 chum salmon. And the chum salmon fishery is much smaller in Kodiak, but this year KRAA provided nearly 40% of the chum salmon fishery, and so that 68,000 fish is a significant hit to that small fishery, which does provide significant economic benefit to the commercial salmon fishery. And these reductions would make achieving cost recovery goals, funding the association, much more difficult. And actually, I'm going to back up here a little bit, because one of the things that I didn't put a lot of focus or emphasis on is that the commercial programs, the commercial benefit that KRAA provides is what pays for the operation. But KRAA is also able to provide sport fish and subsistence benefit at no cost to the users. So the operations of an aquaculture association are almost fully funded by commercial enterprise, and we are able to provide those other programs at no cost to our community, which is something we take a lot of pride in. Sometimes they're our favorite projects, being able to provide a subsistence project at the village of Uzinki or in Port Lions is pretty meaningful to the people there, and it's a significant contribution to allowing them to have access to those subsistence resources that they may otherwise not have. The other thing that the aquaculture associations are charged with is rehabilitation. And for many years, there haven't been a lot of active rehabilitation efforts in the state of Alaska, but right now we're facing some fairly critical situations for Chinook salmon. And one of our 2 Chinook stocks here in Kodiak has been had a decline for some years. And right now, a lot of other management and conservation options have already been explored and they've failed. The west side of Kodiak has lost their June fishery, and a lot of that hinges on low escapement for early run sockeye, but also very low escapement for Chinook salmon, for carlick. And we're looking at a situation where KRAA is going to potentially, and we will be submitting a proposal to conduct active rehabilitation on carlick Chinook. Right now, the only way to pay for that is with cost recovery revenue generated by pink salmon. And so losing that production cripples KRAA's ability to provide services outside of the commercial fisheries that support the association to begin with. So In addition to the direct contribution KRAA makes to the fisheries, even as a nonprofit, we are not exempt from borough severance tax, so we pay borough severance tax on the cost recovery revenue that we collect through licensing returning fish to the hatcheries. So that's a substantial portion, and KRA also owns property on Near Island that we have opted not to take off the property tax rolls. So it's about $50,000 annually coming into the borough's coffers from KRAA as well. So a lot of the money KRAA uses for our operational expenditures is funneled back into the community through payroll and then just business relationships, vendors, and things like that. So KRAA's board of directors has always had a local preference where we can, and so we try to work with as many local contractors and buy things in Kodiak when it's possible. So, and I realized that I actually don't have a slide for one of the proposals in here, but really the biggest economic threat to KRAA is Proposal 170, which proposes a 25% cut to pink and chum salmon production statewide. And I pointed out earlier that KRAA's programs are small, but that doesn't, the fact that we've made deliberate choices here in Kodiak to tailor our programs to the region doesn't allow us to avoid being swept up in these statewide proposals. So, you know, the impacts of these proposals would be similar to our programs as they would in any place, but definitely would make a difference for this community and for the salmon fisheries and the salmon fishers of Kodiak. So there are a lot of things that this proposal would affect and a lot of things that it would do. But if you kind of put your focus on the summary, you know, in regions where they have allocation plans, it would make it difficult to achieve those. Where in places like Kodiak, where we have generally pretty strong wild stock performance, you know, it's the difficulties of making a rational, logical, and well-supported defense of these programs. Utilizing, our focus has been on having mechanistic and empirical, data-driven science to support our arguments in relation to our programs, and we feel that we've done a pretty good job of doing that, and that's led to our success so far. But what we are concerned about is especially this third bullet under long-term impacts, where the Board of Fish's action in this area would establish a precedent for arbitrary percentage-based reductions of already permitted hatchery programs, and with the direct intervention of the Board of Fisheries, make the kinds of impacts that we would see in Kodiak that aren't justified and have no way to measure their success or really even seem to care about what the other broader impacts would be to the communities that rely on these programs. So Proposal 171 is not a proposal that I specifically brought to the Assembly's attention because it is focused on Prince William Sound, but it is another precedent-setting, concerning proposal because of the way that it attempts to end around the established process for hatchery permitting and monitoring. This proposal actually implies that there is not sufficient monitoring or that there's not reporting on issues such as straying, when in fact there are existing mechanisms to address straying and make management decisions in order to limit its impacts. So, and then the other proposal, Proposal 172, is seeking to codify a moratorium on pink and chum hatchery production that would not allow any increases or new permits. And while for people who have hesitation over hatchery programs might say, well, that's why not do that? That doesn't decrease your production now. It doesn't do anything. But what it does is it is another end around of the Commissioner of Fish and Game's authority. The authority to permit hatcheries, to determine what the programs look like, is established through a very extensive permitting process that whether it's recommended or not comes before the commissioner who makes that final decision. And that decision, that authority rests in statute. So it's very unnecessary for the Board of Fish to make formal an agreement that hatchery operators made with the Commissioner of Fish and Game 6 years ago, where we met with him and said, none of us are really looking to increase our pink and chum production numbers. So, if you have concerns, we'll hold off on looking at any increases. And the commissioner said, all right, well, I'm not going to plan to permit any increases. And that's been our longstanding just way to honor the commissioner's authority and to make sure that we are guaranteeing the defensibility and the sustainability of the programs. So I think I'll leave it here on the big picture summary. It probably says more succinctly and more readily the big concerns and our position on these proposals and the reasons for which we would like to have the borough's support. Any questions?
All right, thank you for the presentation. Assembly questions. Dr. Smiley.
Oh, what do you want from us? A letter of support or specifically addressing all three of the proposals?
When I initially contacted the board, I wanted to make sure that, the assembly, I wanted to make sure that the proposals that you spoke to would seem specifically relevant to Kodiak. I know it can be uncomfortable to step outside to address a proposal that's not targeting Kodiak. If the assembly felt comfortable opposing all three proposals, KRAA plans to do so in our statements and testimony. But in the past, the assembly has authorized the mayor to author a letter and has provided resolutions for other projects. KRAA can help support the development of a draft resolution and or a letter. So I thought I'd leave it up to you given your timeline and process.
I think if you gave us some pros, that would help. Okay. There was one thing that I read in the thing that in 170, I believe it was, they said that there hadn't really been a good ecological study of the effect of the hatcheries on wild populations. And I wonder if that's something we can push for NOAA or the state or somebody to do that kind of a study. It's going to take a lot of years to get a real measure on that, and it's going to be kind of tough with a lot of pulling scales and all that kind of stuff.
I had prepared a few different versions of the presentation with some help from this kind of umbrella informal group that we have that helps us with some of our messaging and whatnot, Salmon Hatcheries for Alaska. And I had a number of slides about some of the science. And around 2009, 2010, the hatchery operators actually approached the Department of Fish and Game and said, hey, look, people are starting to be very vocal. There's starting to be some publications that are taking aim at Alaska's hatchery programs, and our hatchery programs are very different than hatchery programs in the lower 48. They were formed in response to some of the issues that were identified with the mitigation and rehabilitation hatchery programs. And so with collaboration through ADF&G, independent contractors, an independent science panel, and funding from grants, hatchery operators, and processors also. They started what was called the Alaska Hatchery Research Project, which is designed to specifically look at hatchery and wild interactions. In fact, sometimes it's called the Hatchery Wild Interaction Study. And so that project, it has been ongoing for 12 years. It's coming to its conclusion, and it specifically has looked at issues related to straying, relative reproductive success, so where hatchery strays spawn in the wild, how do they fare, and potential impacts. And so there are contentions from the proposers here and there that there have been straying and that it hasn't been evaluated. In fact, it has. Some of those, we're still waiting on some of those results. And, you know, of course, when you undertake any kind of study that attempts to capture something that hasn't been done before, more questions arise. And so our next questions are, are just starting to be formed, things that take information from the Hatchery Wild Interaction Study or the Alaska Hatchery Research Project and dig deeper. But what they have found, particularly, that with pink salmon having a short life history, what they have done is drill down on pink salmon in Prince William Sound and chum salmon in Southeast. And for the pink salmon, they have identified that there is lower reproductive success in hatchery fish that spawn in the wild. They've also identified that along with that, hatchery fish tend to select different habitats, different portions of streams, and have a slightly different run timing. So when you're looking at whether or not they have so evaluating what genetic impact they could have on wild stocks, you come in contact, or you have to confront different questions. They also have looked at looking at relative reproductive success. They've had to consider, has it had an impact? And the genetic structure of pink salmon is pretty shallow. They're very similar, and in fact, people have considered whether or not pink salmon are a metapopulation in the northern Gulf of Alaska, whether they're also similar as to be considered one population. But in Prince William Sound, with the genetic information they collected through these studies, they've established that even after 40 years of pink salmon hatchery production in Prince William Sound, there is genetic stock structure that's apparent within those populations. So even though salmon stray, and we accept that as part of what is natural and inherent to all salmon populations, in Prince William Sound, where people have argued that there's extensive straying due to the extensive and massive nature of the pink salmon hatchery programs there, you still see genetic stock structure of the wild pink salmon populations there. And so, and also through that work, we also know that the harvest strategies are very effective at harvesting nearly all of those pink salmon. In the 3 years that they did those studies, the lowest effective harvest rate, I think, was 95%. So that's all the harvest and the brood stock that return to the hatcheries and are utilized for other programs. So there's also the salmon ocean, and I know this is a long answer, but there's also the state of Alaska has also initiated what's called the Salmon Ocean Ecology Program. And Dr. Katie Howard, who's been at the head of that, although I think she might have taken a federal position, has given a number of presentations at the level of the Board of Fish to address and answer some of these questions about ocean competition and whether or not pink salmon from Alaska hatcheries interact with Arctic Yukon Kuskokwim, AYK, Chinook salmon, which are also struggling, and have concluded that the first year of Chinook, the abundance of returning adult Chinook is determined in their first year at sea, which occurs in the Eastern Bering, and that there really isn't any intersection with pink salmon produced by Alaska Salmon Hatchery. So there has been work that has delved into a lot of these questions. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game tends to focus on mechanistic and empirical data rather than correlative data. A lot of the data that you see that sort of impugns hatchery programs relies on correlation. And, you know, in my opinion, it has appeared that there's a lot of cherry picking of data. And if you start with a bias, sometimes it's easy to fulfill your predisposed opinions. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
First off, great presentation. I really appreciate all the data. So you guys have my full support, but I'm curious, in your own words, two questions. What is your opposition's intended outcome by kind of hamstringing you guys? Is it a scientific fear from some community that wants to limit interaction with hatchery salmon and wild salmon stock?
I think that there they don't have a stated outcome or measure of success for these cuts. And that is one of the arguments that we have. They propose an arbitrary 25% cut to pink and chum salmon production, but they don't indicate what they believe it will achieve except for fewer pink and chum salmon. So they do propose arguments related to straying and competition and concerns over wild stock productivity. But, you know, again, looking at the Alaska Hatchery Research Project, if you look at wild stock returns, even at the height of pink salmon production in Prince William Sound, there have been some of the highest wild stock returns on record within the last 10 to 15 years when these programs have been at their maximums. So I'm not, it is difficult to articulate what they hope to achieve because to me, their proposals are not founded in science that should allow them to draw the conclusions that they are drawing.
And then my second question is more of a curiosity, so if we could make it really fast. How would you know that, say, a red from Katoy ended up in the Buskin Lake? You talked about straying quite a bit. I'm just curious some sort of genetic marker, how would you find that number?
So in the late 90s, there was a lot of work that established a technique to provide an otolith mark to hatchery salmon. And so the majority of the salmon produced by aquaculture associations in the state of Alaska receive unique otolith marks for the stock and the facility. And so if somebody wanted to make a determination about whether or not a carcass, because, you know, you can't really extract an otolith until you have a dead fish. If somebody wanted to determine whether that fish was a stray, you'd have to be sort of sampling carcasses on a system and then extract the otoliths and then read the otoliths. And so that is part of what our folks in our research and monitoring group at KRAA do. And we have done a little bit of that work for pink and chums with a grant that we received. And that actually, you know, something I didn't talk about is that Alaska's salmon fisheries have certification, sustainability certification through two different processes, the Responsible Fisheries Management Program, RFM, as well as the Marine Stewardship Council, MSC. And both of those those certification bodies have taken a hard look at hatchery programs and have asked for the kinds of information that are being generated through the Alaska Hatchery Research Project and some of the smaller efforts in other areas and regions in order to provide an external third-party review of the programs of fishery management in the state of Alaska, and have chosen to sustainably certify Alaska's salmon fisheries, including the hatchery programs.
Thanks.
Sorry, that wasn't brief.
Thanks. Well, I can answer. Generally speaking, proposers who send these types of proposals to the Board of Fish, their general goal, overarching goal, is to reduce or eliminate competition of hatchery stocks with wild stocks. So they want to preserve wild stocks, and they don't want any sort of intermixing, whether it's through straying or direct returns to that system. So that's the general purpose of these types of proposals, without having any idea who these people are. So I just have one more question because we need to move on with our agenda here. What kind of timeline? The FinFish meeting's right around the corner. What timeline? What would be the your ideal timeline to receive a letter?
Public comments are due, so written public comments are due March 2nd.
Okay. So any further questions from the Assembly? Mr. Woods, excuse me.
It'll be quick.
I'm never quick.
Don't lie. You mentioned the potential Carluck stock rehabilitation program. I just wanted to kind of get an idea. It's the first I've heard of it. Where are you guys at with that, and how do you plan on overcoming the brood stock issue with double-digit returns?
We are, so we've been talking about Carluck for quite some time, but Kodiak Regional Aquaculture Association, as a body, wanted to make sure that the department would support a rehabilitative effort. The department is presently hopeful that there will be a few more fish next year than in the last 3 years. But we've been doing some supporting Fish and Game, and also with monitoring data, working with Kodiak to get water monitoring data. The Department of Fish and Game has been collecting and trying to recreate their brood tables and get genetic information. And with the last 3 poor years, it's at its beginning stages. So we're going to put in a project proposal before a February 15th deadline, and then it's going to make its way through the department to be vetted, reviewed, dissected, commented upon, and go through the appropriate sort of review and approval process. So those conversations take place at the regional planning team level and then elevate to the department for review. So it's pretty new. The conversation's long, but the proposal itself and forwarding a proposal is new. The board of directors at KRAA decided that we should go ahead and do that following a December KRPT meeting and subsequent discussions and meetings with department.
Great. So I'll be supporting a letter to encourage the board to reject all 3 proposals as well. But that said, do we have Assembly consensus to provide direction? Madam Manager, do you need anything else from us? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fairbanks.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to the next agenda item, let's take a 10-minute break so folks can recharge before we move on.
I'm already here now.
I'm trying not to.
You see me chugging coffee up there.
Yeah. Dude, I called Cody. I was like, hey, what time do you think that, we should show up? Well, he was like, well, I don't know, it could be 5 minutes, or it could be really long. And I'm like, oh. I was like, we're like saying it last or third or last. And he goes, no, watch it online and then you just haul back in. I'm like, no. So I was like, well, we're gonna come and sit. And, oh boy. It has.
It's just like cool, like knowing about the community.
Mm-hmm.
Does the high school do any like youth communication partnerships to like incentivize high school students?
We
to,
used to.
Yeah.
But honestly, our community isn't very well set up. Like Anchorage, Palmer, and the communities that have like AbTech and things like that, that offer a pathway into the trades and things like that. So, hang in there. Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Bo.
Stretch out a little bit.
Yeah. So, back in the day when I was in high school, we had like the fisheries class, and they still have the fisheries class, but it's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, you spent the first semester in the fisheries course for fisheries 1. You spent the first semester learning knots and how to, guide yourself using nautical maps and things like that. And fisheries 2, 3, and 4, you progressed into the commercial fisheries.
Well,
So
I am never
there's a half
succinct.
page of that.
When I had written
Trades,
so that I would
construction,
constrain
things like
myself
that.
a little
We
bit.
didn't have the wood
But
shop.
I
We
think
had
good to see you
carpentry. We didn't have electrical, but we, we have auto shop.
Yeah.
So,
I was just curious from like a healthcare perspective, just seeing like if there is something to like incentivize kids in high school have their CNAs.
so there
Like
is that program.
Yeah, okay.
We do have that connection to the community, a pathway into CNA program. They were trying to expand it to the RN. The problem is that the RN program, it requires much more attention than
Yeah, it's crazy that like being part of like a larger health system, it's like my old health system, it was just them, and like they were struggling with something, it was just so easy to be like, now we offer, we struggle with getting certain positions in certain areas, because of, like GME programming, and the more GME programs you had, the more money you got from the state of Maryland, so they started firing off GME programs, and then it was on my team to hire all the physicians to make these programs, so that they could get the money and all of that good stuff. So we started incentivizing like ridiculous things, and our hospital just did it because they were going to get $15 million in the state of Maryland. So they're like, yeah, we'll pay for that. They're like, look how long our doctor did. Everyone was just like, oh, okay.
So I asked Providence to see if we can't connect with AbTech and we can't connect with the high school to look for pathways into the facilities world. Because we were doing Catherine Cannon. She was a college professor at UAA locally here at Community College. And she would take tours of the hospital. And I started doing the tours with this high school group, and they were like, I was like, how many of you want to be nurses? And nobody raised their hand. You know, most of them wanted to be
right out of high school.
Yeah.
First time out of high school,
Yeah. Get a lot of people going here.
I want to be in the facilities, and I don't know. And so when I was touring them through my area, I had hundreds of questions. And I was like, oh my God, like I was ready for this because normally nobody is like, I don't want to be a part of it. So Providence was looking for a pathway, but legally with the machinery that we work for and things like that, it's hard to allow.
Our little cousin, well, Mason's little cousin, I say little, she's 19.
No.
She got her CNA in high school, and she's now working for a hospital in, they also struggle to get people down out in like Western Maryland, and then Eastern Maryland, like struggle. But she was working for a hospital that is paying for her nursing degree.
Good.
And her payback time to them is only 5 years.
Oh, that's good.
And then she,
I wish Providence offered a program. They used to offer a program like that. Like they give you a certain amount, and
whatever Target didn't have one.
People would take advantage of it, yeah.
Just, hey, I'm getting my MBA for 2 years, and students like, I didn't MBA. They're like, give it to me, guys. It was very interesting. That's also, my district just went through a lot of turmoil. Other places that went very well.
I was talking to, oh my goodness gracious, I almost broke the chair. Holy smokes. I think that was almost. No, it just creaked. Yeah. Still solid. Thank you, and I apologize. I brought enough attention to the hallway came. Oh boy.
Who thought this crap?
Yeah. So the guild program, Liz up in the lab, she's like, I don't know what to do, and I don't want to get the degree because it's so expensive, and I'm like, you know about the guild. Yeah, she was like, yeah, but I can't find the rope. What's the one? I was like, good job, but you're within the guild program. I was like, you can go out and source your own school, and then go through guild, have them talk to the school, and they'll apply your $5,200 a year to that through the guild program. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I was like, also, if there's any additional certificates that you need, if there's any conferences that you want to go to, it pays for travel, things like that. So your guild benefit goes a long way. Like if you want to get a certificate in pottery mix, it literally will apply. It's your money, your benefit. So I'm explaining this to her. She's I was like, I paid $500 back. So when your lease runs out, and she's like, oh, in 2 years, $10,500. I already had some college done, of course, but it took me 2 years, and I only paid $500. They don't get that much from the state. I was like, I'm not paying about $5,000 out of pocket for my master's, so I'll finish my last semester in February. I want to apply for scholarships, and graduate program scholarships are highly competitive. So
we're down to 7 seconds, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I used all the
appreciate it.
So you had to do the 2-year program, and you get state resident rate if you didn't pay the out of state resident rate.
Okay, welcome back. We will continue with the agenda. The fifth item on our agenda is the discussion of tax revenues and maximum allowable property tax revenue, also known as MAPTR. Staff report, please, Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. DPO. So my intent tonight as we enter the fiscal year 2027 budget cycle is to start with a talk on revenues. And no good talk about revenues is complete without talking about MAPTR. So I made a couple of infographics because I think it helps people absorb information a little bit easier. And I also have the last 2 years MAPTRs on the wall over here. So if you want to see how it changes from year to year, there's good representation right there. As we've really talked a lot tonight about MAPTR, and we've had some people call in public comments. But MAPTR stands for the maximum allowable property tax revenue. It's commonly called the tax cap. It's found in our code in section 3.25.030. It's the highest amount of property tax revenue that can be levied in any fiscal year. The amount is directly tied to the tax amount that was levied in the previous fiscal year. For example, in this next season, in fiscal year 27, we can't levy more property tax than we did in fiscal year 26. In the infographic I've presented to you, It tells you which funds these limits apply to and which funds the limits do not apply to. There is a supplement, that's this Excel spreadsheet that looks like this, that explains what all of those individual funds are. Because I just listed out the general fund, education support, and renewal and replacement. If you're interested in what all those other fund numbers are, this will lead you to the right direction. It also tells you the fund application and the fund type for each one of those numbers that you'll find on this sheet. Every year, we take the amount that we've levied the year before, and then we have adjustments. Those adjustments are a prior year true-up. That's taxes that could have been collected in the year before that have not been. Inflation, we use the Urban Alaska Consumer Price Index. For 2025, that rate was 2.1%. And then we do taxes on new construction and improvements. And that's how we get our total max allowable revenue. This is really early in the year to talk about this. Usually we don't have those new construction members for like 2 more months. And Seema and her team magically were able to get me these numbers yesterday. So thank you, Seema. I thought that was a really important part of the conversation. I've been attending the school board meetings, and I know that their max window that they can ask for is sitting up close to $14.5 million this year. So this max allowable property tax revenue will become a discussion as we move forward. As we talk about revenue, I made another infographic, this one, that looks like puzzle pieces, and it's a little bit on the childish side, but it does take all of these pieces to make our entire revenue picture. If you're listening to this online and you want to see this information, they were added to the supplemental materials part on the packet. So if you're just looking at the agenda, they're not there, but if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link and all of this information is included there. So you'll see there's these 8 ways that we get revenue into the borough. And then attached, or like the go along with that, is this second Excel spreadsheet where I took each of these categories, and you have the 22 through 25 actual amounts, the 26 amended budget amounts, and the average of all of those. So you can get an idea of where our revenue is coming. The thing I need to point out about this general fund revenue, the Excel spreadsheet part, is this is only the amount of property tax that goes into the general fund revenue bucket. It's kind of confusing because some of that money is passed through for bond debt, and we'll get into that in a little bit deeper discussion later. But this will give you a good idea of how much general fund revenue that we have each year. And in 2025, in that green font, we have that one kind of strange outlier where we had to factor in the final spending of our ARPA money. So it's kind of in its own line at the bottom there. So as we talk about where revenue comes from, how much property tax the code is currently restricting us for collecting, as we get closer and we're going to determine what the mill rate is, I think these are pieces that when I was in your seat, I did not fully understand. So I'm trying to do a better job with making sure that the basic building blocks are there for folks, and try to clear up some of those questions. And we don't have, the only actual projection that I've worked on is the severance tax. On there, you can see it has been going down pretty significantly over the last few years, and that's our sea products from fisheries. And I met with James Turner this week to ask him what his forecast was for next year, and he told me to take 35% off this year. So, yeah, my thoughts exactly, Mr. Smiley. Yes. So we have a 27% reduction in pollock and cod that could get changed next month, right? From the Board of Fish. I'm looking at you, Mr. Whiteside, because you're my man up there. And then there's like a 70% reduction in one of the salmon types that we're looking at this year. So I think it was 30 million down to like 4, like something just absolutely remarkable. So when we take 35% of that out, that's going to be a big chunk. So we're going to keep these updated as much as we can. You'll see how motor vehicle tax, which we just talked about, plays into this. And all of how we're getting all of our funds. So do you guys have any questions about revenue tonight? While you're thinking about all that information, staff is starting to go through the department budgets. We start next week, so we'll go department by department. And then next week at agenda setting with the mayor and the DPO, we'll work on a timeline for when we start presenting department budgets to the assembly and how you want to do that. The last few years, we've gone line item by line item because there's always one person who says that they want that, but I'm hoping this year there'll be more people that say they don't. But it's all available. If that, however, the assembly decides that they want to go through that, we will do that. And then we have some deadlines. The budget has to be passed before June 10th. So we'll kind of go from that date backwards and figure out how to fit in all of the information. Service areas have started their budget meetings already, so the process is in full swing. Any questions?
Any questions for Amy? This is pretty complex. Okay. Also, that's a great prompt. Start thinking about what you want these budget presentations to look like. Do you prefer line by line? You don't have to answer this now, but just start thinking about it. You want to see more broad categorical budget items presented with maybe year-to-year changes, all options that we can consider. So give that a bit of thought. But certainly, I would encourage folks to understand what MAPTR is and what it means for how much revenue we can generate and spend year to year. This will limit our decision-making in the coming months. All right, thank you, Madam Manager. All right, that's, oh yes, Dr. Smiley, please.
What if we can't make everything fit with MAPTR? How do we get rid of it?
So when MAPTR was first put into code, it was set there for 2 years. So any point after that, the assembly can just vote to take it out.
Okay.
It is something that the community votes to put back in. So if the assembly would vote it out and the community is like, nope, I want it back in, they would talk to NOVA and have it put on the ballot for our local elections.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
Hey, what about amending it? I don't think when MAPTR was introduced, the law of unintended consequences, nobody foresaw our assessed values going up 40%. So could we amend it to say the rate can't go up year over year? That demonstrates that the borough stays within, isn't increasing tax rates.
Are you saying that the mill rate can't go up year over year?
Correct.
So
what I'm saying is we amend that section of code to say cannot go up by raising the mill rate except for, the CPI percentage.
So the effect of MAPTR, the way that it stands, is like a teeter-totter. As the values go up, the mill rate has to come down, right? So to keep us in whatever MAPTR is allowing us in. And for staff, the reason MAPTR is so important to have in place is because as those notice of values go up, the tool that we have to keep the community calm when they come in is explaining the teeter-totter to them. Like there's, the mill rate will have to come down. But as Ms. Kika said in her comment, even though the mill rate went down, because your value was going up, your taxes can still go up even when the mill rate goes down. So while we're not fixing the increased taxing problem, I think the important part there is as long as the state directs us to assess the way that we're assessing, this is what we're going to get. And even if an assembly, you're like, I'm going to take $200,000 off the value of everyone's house just to protect people, like your value wouldn't be so much, the mill rate would have to go up in order to fund the services. And the option is start picking services that the borough doesn't want to provide, which might be very well where we're at if we're going to keep MAPTR on the books and if we're going to, once we, luckily, we tell the school district how much they're going to get early enough that we then know what we have left, and then we have to try to make it work. So I think there is absolutely ways we could do a MAPTR-like thing differently. And I'm going to have to go play with those numbers to see what that looks like. But as long as the state is telling us how to assess, there's no break
Right.
in those values changing right now.
But I think what people fail to understand is that the borough's obligation to the district grows with the assessed values.
It absolutely does. Well, so the school district funding is based off our full determined value.
Right.
Our full determined value. So so if our assessor goes out and our assessed values are at 95% of market value, the state looks at us and they're like, oh, I'm going to add 5% because you're not at 100. If our assessor goes out and we're assessing low and it's 80%, they add 20% to our value. So the school funding budget, no matter what we assess at, they're getting 100%. So for that full determined value. We can do another session on school budget funding because I think that's a really complicated process too. And they're just setting that right now. But at the last workshop meeting that I went to, they were still picking, I think they have settled on 103 intensive students, and that's a large amount of money for each one of those. But we're looking at somewhere between 14.3 and 14.6 million for the max, and their budget that they're building is on asking us the maximum that they can. And so I think the people at agenda setting and anyone who's been paying attention to what the ask is going to be like, we know that we need to start talking about that really early because that's going to color the rest of our decisions during budget time.
Mr. Smiley.
As I understand it, if we have to keep the level at the same as last year, that implies that we can't do anything new that's going to cost money, correct?
Sort of. So the property tax that we collect, we do have those adjustments we have CPI, we have true up, we have new construction. So
Well, what if we wanted to have a new department, for example? Something that's really going to cost some money.
So if you were developing a new department at the borough, we wouldn't have the money to do that unless
Yeah.
it was a very small department.
So what would we have to do then? Then we would have to amend MAPTR or change it in some way?
If you want to collect more if your funding is coming from property tax, MAPTR would have to be taken out of the books.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so we will move on to the last item on the agenda is discussion of code change to reduce allowable assembly absences. I submitted this one. The reason I did is, I believe it was last year, maybe even my first year, I learned that we as an assembly, we can miss up to 50% of regular meetings in one calendar year and 100% of work sessions. So if I didn't want to come to a single work session in a year, I don't have to, and I can miss up to half of the regular meetings. I don't have to come to any committee meetings, and I could still come here whenever I want, as long as I meet my 50% requirement. That didn't sit well with me, and I actually had a discussion with folks during a meeting that had nothing related to this topic. We were just sitting on a break and here in the chambers, and they were curious why some people were never at meetings, and I'm not going to point anyone out, but I said, well, I don't even know what the allowable absences are, and I looked it up, and that was the shocking information that I found. So the way I view it is, this is just a discussion item. There's no ordinance developed yet or any code changes. But my thoughts were, if you're going to run for the borough assembly, you're committing to the office. You need to be up here. It's a lot of work and a lot of time, but that's the commitment. I view that tightening that up to a quarter. I'm amenable to quarter, third, but it should include work sessions. This is where we're getting a lot of the work done. There's been a lot of work sessions where we spend this time, and then we go to a regular meeting, and the regular meeting duration's a quarter of what the work session was. So I do think it should include work sessions. We have expanded ability to attend remotely if our jobs, or if we're on leave for whatever reason, or for any reason we're off island, we can still tap in remotely for a certain amount of meetings a year. And if anyone has has a medical issue, we can certainly grant excused absences for medical as well. So there's a lot of flexibility if you can't make a meeting, but just being able to flat out miss every single work session and half of the regular meetings, why even run for office at that point? So that's where I'm at. I just view it as a housekeeping and a commitment to our community topic, but open it up for discussion. Mr. Gardner.
100% behind you. Just wanted to make sure you put something in there, some kind of amendment that if I did rip my Achilles while I was out bear hunting, I get a few excused absences or something. Just having that written in there would be great.
Mr. Johnson.
So I agree with this. However, we just had a long discussion, I think 2 weeks ago at the work session, about the will of the voters, respecting the will of the voters. So I find it a little inconsistent that we're going to say, well, we're going to tighten up our requirement and kick someone off the assembly for missing meetings when we just had a very long discussion about the will of the voters as it applies to responsibilities and authority and chain of command. The other less pressing concern I have is in my time on this assembly, I've seen some pretty significant inconsistency among the assembly with approving medical absences. And to support this, there needs to be more consistency. If somebody has a medical reason that they can't attend, they should either all be excused or none be excused. And I had one other thought, but I've lost it, so.
Thank you. Good points made. Mr. Woods.
No, it's not about medical absences. And it was an ACL, not an Achilles. But my two concerns are this. If we're going to go change this, as it sits already, we already start to have some barriers for folks in our rural communities with regards to being able to participate as members of the assembly or run. Yes, is it a good idea to miss a bunch? No, it's not. Is that good practice? No. But as it is now, if we're going to reduce it to something like a quarter, we're not just looking at potentially issues with people in our villages, but also potentially commercial fishermen, which make up a very large percentage of our workforce. I mean, you're looking, commercial fisheries are ongoing right now with the cod fisheries. Salmon starting up into May, beginning to June, running well into August or September for some folks. Then you're right back to halibut. The degree of flexibility we currently have, I think, supports those commercial fishermen being able to participate adequately. And I'm not really a huge fan of reduction for that reason.
Mr. Ames.
I do think that people should show up. I try to. Last year, no, the year before, I did a lot of work in Old Harbor, and there were 2 regular meetings I missed because of my brother's health. Other than that, I have several, but I was never excused, and I had a plane ticket on Island Air that I paid for with my own money, but the weather stopped me from getting it. Granted, there's a limited number of remote ones, but I found it interesting that I never was excused when I put up my own money and was willing to fly to town and then fly back the next day for work. But weather stopped me. So I think we need to figure out to make sure things are consistent medically and otherwise when it comes to excuse absences.
Mr. Smiley.
Well, I don't think allowing people to miss up to 25% of the meetings is a hill too high to climb. That seems pretty easy to do. 50% is a little bit beyond the pale as far as I'm concerned. And it should count both work sessions and regular meetings, I think. There is an awful lot of information that's transferred in work sessions, which I think is crucial to the effective use of this assembly. As to the issue of whether your absence is excused or not, I never figured out why we debated that. I think there were some people that were opposed to the idea of giving people an excuse, whereas others weren't. I'm not opposed to excuses, but maybe we should have some clear-cut policy about that rather than just have it ad hoc.
Thanks. Yeah, and I've thought about that as well, and I struggle with excusing absences. So I'm one of the camp that if it's not medical, I'm not going to excuse absences or vote to excuse an absence. Medical, universal. I will always support that. But sticking back to the topic or the agenda item, it sounds like we have some mixed thoughts on it. I appreciate some statements made about, this would certainly exclude certain demographics of our community. However, how effective is someone going to be if they can only attend meetings half of the year? If they're not here for the entire budget cycle, that's one person who doesn't vote or weigh in on our entire budget. If they're only here outside of those opportunities, I completely empathize, but I don't sympathize there. That person probably shouldn't run for office. If you wanted to have scenarios where people who had jobs that pulled them off, we have, I guess, for example, there's a guide that spoke to us not too long ago that works in a service area. Maybe that person commits their time to a service area or a fire district where they don't have as much time commitment to serve in that elected office versus the assembly. But if you're going to work on the run for office for the assembly, you're representing the borough, and that need is year round. Coming and going half of the year to me just isn't enough time to understand what's going on. You're going to be playing catch up the entire time. By the time you understand what's going on, off you go again for 6 months. So certainly empathize, but this is a full-time commitment. That's certainly how I view it. I miss a meeting here and there as well, but I don't know. How do we feel about, do we advance this to an ordinance with some draft language that we can toss around, including absences? Mr. Johnson, then Mr. Ames.
If it were advanced with clear guidance on work, medical, and bereavement excuses, I would support it. Absent those, I can't.
Hey, Mr. Ames.
Dr. Smiley touched on something that I fully agree with, and that is the work sessions. The regular meetings, except for needing a quorum to vote, really go through quite quickly, and it's a matter of voting. The real meat of topics is usually discussed during the work sessions, and sometimes it gets beat up through several work sessions and then gets voted on. So I do think work sessions are a key issue, and there should be some sort of limit on those absences.
Hey, Ms. Roberts.
I would support this moving forward if there are those specifications talking about excused absences and outlining what those could be. I think being elected or appointed to this role, the constituents are putting their faith in you to show up, so I think attending a quarter of them, including the work sessions, is pretty fair. But again, I just want there to be clarity into excused absences like medical or family emergencies.
Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, since I was I'm sorry, Mr. Woods.
As it sits now, we effectively make it impossible for someone living in one of our rural communities to serve on the Borough Assembly. Just with the requirements and with the realities of weather and travel to and from these rural communities. Unless, and agreed, if you're going to do something like this, there should be a very direct definition of what these excused absences would be and what they should look like. However, unless there is a corresponding bolstering to electronic participation in at least the work sessions, I cannot get behind supporting this.
Yeah, thank you for that. So one thing that I know I've mentioned it more than once, and I'm not going to go down too far down it because it's not appropriate for this topic, but is full electronic participation for anyone in the village should they get elected. I think that's totally reasonable. But anyhow, certainly open to exploring that at another time. But it sounds like we have folks are okay with at least moving this forward to just develop some draft language that we could shop around. This is by no means a commitment to adopt any sort of code or anything similar. Madam Clerk, how would I proceed as the sole originator of this discussion item?
Mr. DPO, it looks like there's support for it to move forward, and it seems like the marching order would be to present a draft ordinance that would also include provisions on how assembly members are excused during assembly meetings, regular meetings. You do have provisions already that exist in 2.30025, which is the electronic participation in meetings, which the following circumstances are allowed: illness or injury of the mayor or assembly members or their family member, the passing of assembly member, obligations related to their employment, responsibilities pertaining to borough business, out of town commitment that prevents the mayor or assembly member from attending in person. Would you like to see those provisions in allowable excuses for the assembly members? Start off a draft with those?
I don't think it's unreasonable to populate the draft with them. I certainly am not open to all of them myself as allowable reasons for an allowable excuse, because if you have those reasons, you can participate remotely. But I think for discussion, it'd be useful to have them all on the table.
Okay. I can start a draft and then we'll maybe put it in another work session so we can fine tune it.
We can certainly put this past more pressing items in the coming months here.
Okay, and then also in the actual or the ordinance itself, we would reduce the allowable absences to 1/4 of the meetings.
This is a starting point.
Okay. Just to be clear to the assembly, also the way that we account for, as long as, so that we're all on the same page, the way that we account for absences right now is that we account from November 1st until October 31st of the following year, and we account for all meetings, work sessions, special meetings, and regular meetings. And whether you're excused or not, we will count. If you missed half of those total meetings, your seat will automatically vacate. So I think if we're going to change, we're going to change it to 1/4 of all those meetings, okay, that were held. Good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to packet review. First, we have our public hearings. There's 3. First is ordinance number FY 2026-15, amending various sections of the Kodiak Island Borough Code, Title 17 zoning, related to short-term rental definitions, zoning, and permitting requirements. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. DPO. Before he sneaks off, or if you don't have any questions for him, I just want to say happy birthday to Chris, whose birthday is tomorrow. The proposed code amendment provides distinct short-term rental uses based on current code allowances while providing additional guidance to staff and to ensure that zoning compliance permits require documentation for the new short-term rental uses, that they're registered for transient accommodation tax as well. You see a variety of revisions to definitions. The discussion part of your packet tonight lists out a lot of those definitions. There's also amendments for various districts and updates to parking regulations around short-term rentals. You've seen this is the second work section and the introduction at last week's meeting, and our community development director is here tonight if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any assembly questions? Nope, just a reminder for folks, two in the audience or anyone listening online, this is not meant to restrict your ability to pursue a short-term rental for yourself, or limit it to the number of short-term rentals in the community. I know that's still an ongoing concern that's been brought to my attention. That is not the purpose. It is to modernize language so we can get with the times here with any potential revisions moving forward. Thank you, Director French, and happy birthday. Okay, next is ordinance number FY 2026-17. Amending various sections in Title II Administration and Personnel, Title IV Service Areas, and Title VII Elections to prohibit holding multiple elected offices. Mr. Johnson.
We've talked about it.
Thank you. We certainly have. So I've thought about this one and some points that were made. This one's still something I support, and I just a few talking points of why I still think the Assembly should consider adopting this is there's a clear conflict of authority. When a service area board is subordinate to the manager is ultimately the authority for all service areas and related contracts. And so if there's an Assembly member that is elected that's on the service area board, that Assembly member now supervises the manager. So this creates inherent conflict. It's unavoidable. It's just baked in. This isn't something you can point out like we do when there's a conflict of interest when it's financial in nature. It's not a one-off. It's inherent, constant conflict. So ultimately, it's our responsibility to protect the manager's authority and clean contracting practices. This is standard in all levels of government to address inherent conflict. You know, the easiest example here within our community is you cannot run for elected office as a member of the school board and run for office as a member of the Assembly, because there's that inherent conflict involved with holding both offices. So this already exists in all levels of government, through checks and balances. This is an unbalanced government for that scenario for someone sitting in those two offices here in the borough. And it doesn't prevent folks from running for office. If someone wants to run for multiple elected offices, in this case, they would have to choose one and run for that office. So they couldn't run for the Assembly at the same time as the school board, at the same time as the service area board. Choose one, and you can serve your community in that way. But running and holding two it just adds to the conflict. I think it's a reasonable approach to maintain balance of authority. The manager can provide clear direction without being concerned about anyone superseding her authority, which is codified for service areas. But we have no mechanism to address the conflict other than acknowledging that when it happens, that it exists and will always exist. So those are my, I guess, recondensed thoughts on the topic and why I agreed to co-sponsor it. So I didn't know if anyone wanted to expand on that. Ms. Roberts?
I'm still torn on this one, and I am interested to hearing public comment. I understand the concern about chain of command and potential conflicts, and that does make sense to me. I hear that. At the same time, in such small community like Kodiak, it's already hard to find people willing to serve, and I am worried about putting up the barriers that could prevent good, committed people from volunteering in multiple ways. An idea that I had talked to a friend about was sometimes there's multiple seats available or open on these service area boards. Could we have it somehow where if there's more than one seat, an assembly member could serve until those seats are filled, just so there's someone in that seat and making those decisions? I'm just trying to find a balance there where we're not preventing anyone from serving either one, but that there's people in each of those.
Madam Manager, would you like to offer your perspective?
Thank you. I'm going to act like we didn't already talk about this today. When Mr. Whiteside asked me earlier in the day, I said I'm pretty neutral, but then I texted it out. I do understand that service area chairs have to have a work plan and have a system of stuff that they have to do, and things are on a schedule. But last year we had a situation come up with a community member who wanted something done, and I think that her request was legitimate. And I attempted to get the service area to do something, and I couldn't. And I went to the chair, I went to the vice chair, I went to the members. This person had gone to their meetings. We found out that that particular service area didn't have meetings very frequently, so people didn't have an outlet to talk about. But we made it through that situation, and this issue got taken care of, and everything was fine. I do think that a rule like this would just prevent that conflict. Like it can't happen if that rule is in place. But it is there's only one service area that I would even be remotely worried about. The other service area chairs call and ask advice and are really easy to work with. And that service area chair is easy to work with too, unless you want them to change their work plan. So I value this. I value the service of those people, but if the intent is to make it so that we cannot find ourselves in that potential conflict again, then this is a rule that needs to happen. I'm always very careful not to make personality-based decisions, and so that it teeters back and forth with personality. But it would be very easy for any manager sitting here with any service area chair, if they were on the assembly or they were the mayor, to find themselves in the exact same situation I did, where you could not, I just couldn't make anything happen. And the assembly tried to make things happen, and they no one could make anything happen. So it wasn't just me. My 7 bosses couldn't affect change either. So, and I think that was personality over what the normal structure of a service area is going to be.
Yeah, and that's the challenge is ultimately, beyond the authority itself is when we've had, I'm in my 3rd year now, we've had several folks come in and say, hey, how can I get something done with my service district? We're not having meetings. I've called, I've emailed, no one's calling me back. They come to us as the assembly upset because nothing's happening. They're paying taxes to get a service rendered in their area. They come to us for help. We can't do anything. There is nothing in code that gives us as a governing body any sort of authority to say, I hear you. That sounds like a reasonable concern. We're going to help you get that work done. We cannot do that. That is solely the manager's authority to do that. So when we have folks that come to us and they're saying, hey, I've emailed, called for months and nothing's happening. Here's a stack of emails that I printed out. Here's pictures of the problems at my house that I need to get worked on. There is nothing we can do. That person's going to spin their wheels, come to us. We are going to go like this and then ask the manager, whomever that person is, can you look into this? And even then, it takes time and effort that shouldn't have to be done or taken when if you had a simple linear authority process, that person reaches out to the service area. Either the service area says, great, we'll look into it. Yes, it qualifies for work. They do the work. If not, it goes to the manager. The manager makes that determination. Issue is resolved. So this isn't just only about the manager's authority. It's about the people in the service areas and giving them a very clear way to address concerns if duties or services aren't being performed in their service area. So it's not just about folks in this room. Mr. Ames and then Mr. Gardner.
I'm wondering, even if a service person was not on the assembly in a situation arise like the one that was referred to, would it have made much difference in how long it took to get the situation resolved? And I'm thinking the answer is no, and I'm thinking, therefore, this really doesn't solve the problem of getting things done. It may solve the problem of potential conflict, but the problem of getting the service district people the results they want, we're somewhat limited, and I don't think it would have made much difference in at least.
Madam Manager, care to weigh in on that as far as would the timeline have been altered if that dynamic didn't exist in your previous experience?
In the situation I think we're all talking about, where the family came in that had special needs kids in the house, and they had like an icing issue right in front of their house, and they had visual, like couldn't see up and down the road, and there's some different issues. I don't know if God himself, or as I say herself, could have made that happen any faster. It was the I talked to the chair, I talked to the vice chair, I talked to the board members, I tried to get the contractor to do it outside. I just went straight to the contractor and asked them to do the work, and everyone just said, no, I will not cross the chair. So it's a very loyal group of folks to someone who has been leading that service area for 30 years. And so I don't think that this would have made a difference for that particular scenario, no.
Mr. Gardner.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to say I've been pretty darn against this from the get-go, and not to take anything away from what you and Mr. Johnson have been saying. Amy may have just flipped me with her other story. I've got to think about it, but I just wanted to state that.
Well, thanks. Any other assembly discussion? All right, well, we will be seeing this again at the next regular meeting. Okay, moving on to the last ordinance for the public hearing, ordinance number FY 2026-18, amending Title 8, Health and Safety, Chapter 8.25, Solid Waste Collection and Disposal. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. DPO. This is our solid waste code update. This is, I know you've heard it a couple of times now, but this is one that is different than how we normally do code updates. The intent is to revise the code. The existing code would sunset when the current solid waste contract expires on June 30th, 2027. Our current code would stay in place until then, and then magically on July 1st, this code would take place. We are working on the RFP right now for the new solid waste contract. We would like to reference new code. The main group of changes that you'll see in this code is taking the contract language out of the code, like the specific details, and putting in more enforcement and regulatory information, but we'll keep the contract deals in the contract. So it's making code shorter and clearer. We have worked with the Solid Waste Contract Committee and the previous borough attorney and the current borough attorney group to get this to a place where we think it'll be something that the new contractors can reference, and we're having them build the contract and come to us instead of us building the contract and shopping it. And so we're doing stuff differently than we did 7 years ago. So I think this method is going to be a lot cleaner.
Thank you. Assembly discussion, Mr. Smiley.
One thing that I found interesting about this is that the current code that we have was originally farmed out to an independent group. And apparently, according to Alaska Waste, that group really didn't understand how waste was really handled and wrote the code or the basis for the code for us at that point. I think that's back in the past some distance. This new version that Patricia has worked for extensively on is just so much clearer, so much easier to deal with. And it accompanies something different, which is up until now we've been doing invitation to bid where people tell us what they want to do as opposed to requests for proposals where they have to present something and we decide whether we want to do that or not. So I think that's going to make a big difference as well. I'm really supportive of this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I agree with Mr. Smiley. I've reviewed this information and chair that committee now, and Patricia's done such a good job alongside with Cody. So I will certainly be supporting it, and I encourage the Assembly to do so as well. Okay, moving on to resolutions. Resolution number FY 2023-03F, a resolution of the Assembly, excuse me, a resolution of the Assembly of the Kodiak Island Borough amending various sections of the Kodiak Island Borough Records Retention Schedule and Central Filing System to reflect amendments to the assessing, Borough Fire Departments, Community Development, Engineering Facilities, Finance, Information Technology, and Resource Management Series. Staff report, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. DPO. That's a mouthful. 5 months ago, the Assembly adopted resolution number FY 2023-03E. And we started with the manager's office, the clerk's office, and personnel management. This resolution that's before you will get the other departments to into alignment with what you adopted 5 months ago. It's a cleanup resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly discussion? All right, we're going to move on to other items. I'm going to package these first two up. Authorization for the Borough Manager to reimburse Providence Kodiak Island Medical Center for the following. The chiller 95% design in the amount of $67,120.12, and for the chiller 100% design and construction documents in the amount of $25,305. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteside. So when this project originally started, which is now literally years ago, the Assembly approved $187,824 for the 65% design, which would be the cost that Providence presented to go from 35 to 65. But we weren't communicating that well then, and that was way more money than they needed for that phase gate. The actual 65% design cost was $63,977.12. So that left $123,846.88 encumbered that the Assembly approved for that phase gate that was not used. So that money is sitting there. Now, we have brought this to you before. The numbers did not align. It was very confusing. Tyler, who has been sitting in the audience for literally hours now, spent a lot of time, and what we needed was Providence to go back to their we were getting vendors to Providence invoices, and we can't pay an invoice to one of Providence vendors. We need Providence to give us an invoice. So we had to go back and do all that work, and then they got us our invoices, and then I was very annoying and said stuff like, well, where's the documentation? And how did you get that number? And where's this proposal? And then they had to go back to like 21, 22, 23, dig out all of those old proposals and get us these numbers. Because we've been currently struggling with projects and numbers and the costs of things. In Amy's dream world, what I would like to do is say, hey, we have $123,000 left in this 65% line item. I just want to use that to pay for the 95% and the 100 that's in the project, but that's not actually what the Assembly approved. The Assembly approved amount for 65%, and if we just take that money and roll it into something else, I think we lose a layer of transparency. So these two other items in front of you are laying out exactly how much money it costs to go from 65 to 95, and then from 95 to 100. Our ARB has approved all the way through 95% and said that this project does not need to go back to the ARB to go to 100%, which is a lovely thing for them to do. It took out another step. So what we're asking to do is different ARB money for the 63,977.12 and the 25,305. And then in our next quarterly budget amendment, which we do not every quarter, but as we're closing out projects, we'll say, hey, we allotted this, it only cost this, we'd like to move this back to the R&R fund. Because I think that's a much stronger way for people to be able to follow where the money is instead of just rolling it from one line item to another line item. In the future, we are looking at different ways of doing all projects and matching up our borough projects with this phase gate that we do for the hospital, just so it can come in front of you at 35, 65, and 95. So there won't be the price shocks that we had with our stairs projects. So I think that these two items are a very good step in putting in a layer of transparency and showing Providence what we need and partnering with Providence. We need to be able to pass audits, so the numbers need to match up. And so, and we're working with them on what expenses can be covered with R&R money and which expenses can't. And we're still in the discussion of how much money could the borough save if we were doing project management on our own? Or would it cost more? So but as we fine tune that process, those are all options that we're looking at. I think it would have to cause the hire of another person in our projects office. But when you look at the money for design and construction management, and so I think there's more work for us to do on making sure that this process goes as smoothly as it can, and we're getting the best value out of that R&R fund. But for this, I feel very comfortable with the extra steps of transparency so people can actually watch where that money is going. Sorry, you tried to combine them, and then I was like very long talking. Yes.
No worries. Thank you. Assembly discussion. Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, no secret. I was pretty against this and these numbers and whatnot when we were looking at it last time, a lack of itemization. Tyler, I'd love to get a chance to go over numbers with you at some point before we get to the next chapter of this. Seeing this now, and also wanting to put some respect into the work of the prior assembly, I think looking at these numbers, this now has my support, but I really want an opportunity to dig into details, and I don't want to bore everybody else here wanting to watch me go line by line on it.
Thank you. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Madam Manager. This makes entirely too much sense. I love it. Are we sure it's government? Just asking for a friend. Thank you so much.
Well, I think because we do projects every day and we're looking at these numbers every day, things make a lot more sense to us. And it just, I think we're skipping over some of those transparency items that we can do. And so the idea of the project dashboard and watching this money move and recording where the money moves, and having that be on that quarterly budget report will just make a lot more sense to everyone. I think this is a stronger way to do it. And it's the same R&R fund. It's going to go back to the same, and it would be really easy just to be like, oh, just move it. But that's not how we should be doing business, and that doesn't make us transparent. So transparency is the goal.
Any further discussion? All right. Thank you so much for coming and learning so much there is about our wonderful community. We can't wait to see you again. Okay, up next is Assembly Review of the State of Alaska Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office Beverage Dispensary License Renewal Application for Bernie's Bar LLC, doing business as Bernie's Bar, license number 4346. Staff report, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. DPO and members of the Assembly. We investigated this license, and it came back with 9 trouble reports, or 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 trouble reports. And the code says that if they could be reasons to protest the license, I need to bring it before you. That's why it's before you for review. I just want to remind you that last year we did the same thing for a B&B bar, and that one had 19 trouble reports, and you voiced non-protest on that one. So it's before you. You can voice protest, you can voice non-protest. I'm going to leave it up to you on how you would like to proceed on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly discussion. Mr. Ames.
Similar, as you mentioned, to the B&B, having so many complaints or whatever, you need to look at it more closely, I feel, because I know at least in the B&B, many of those were the actual B&B calling the police to stop problems. And so I feel those should not be used against an establishment. They're doing what they should be doing. Their number might be a little higher, but they're doing it properly. And so therefore, I think we have to be very careful to use any of those numbers as our deciding factor. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right. Okay, moving on to the confirmation of mayoral appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission, city seat of Mr. Joseph Delgado. Staff report, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Our code requires that whenever we have an applicant for a Planning and Zoning Commission city seat, that we need to give that application over to the city so that they can turn around and make a recommendation to the borough mayor for his appointment to that seat. So the recommendation we got from Thursday, from their meeting on Thursday, we got the recommendation on Friday, is for Mr. Joe Delgado to be appointed to this seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, I think we'll have some updates from the mayor when he returns on all of these appointments as well. So next is confirmation of mayoral appointments of the city and borough representatives from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the Borough Lands Committee. Miss Tracy Craig and Miss Sarah Fraser. Staff report, Madam Clerk.
So on an annual basis, the commission, per borough code, for the lands committee, they need to make a recommendation to two seats. One to a seat from a city-appointed representative from the city. So that would be Miss Tracy Craig, and the other one is the borough seat, which is Miss Sarah Fraser. So this is to appoint them to the Lands Committee for a year. Thank you.
Thank you. And the mayor will be addressing that one as well, or those when he gets back as well. Next is another confirmation of the mayoral appointment to the Solid Waste Advisory Board of Miss Joy Erlenbach. Staff report, Madam Clerk.
Yes, this is for a regular seat on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Glad to hear that. All right. Any assembly discussion for potential appointments? Okay, moving on. So we won't be discussing this today, but during the next regular meeting, we will potentially adjourn into executive session or move to executive session to discuss for a discussion of pending litigation with Kodiak Area Native Association, CANA case number 3K0-21-00057C1. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. DPO. I'm just going to provide a quick update. No decision has been handed down on that case. I'm just looking for permission to extend an agreement that we already have with them for tax year 26.
Thank you. And Ms. Roberts, did you want to weigh in now, or?
For the executive session at next week's regular meeting, I intend to declare a conflict of interest since I am employed by the Kodiak Area Native Association.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. Clerk's comments. Madam Clerk.
Mr. DPO and members of the Assembly, I emailed you my clerk's report, and just to touch on a few topics, we had some comments regarding consolidation at the last regular meeting. So I compiled some information and made it available to the public and to you as well. So there's historical information that's available in our meetings page. regarding the efforts made on consolidation from 1987 to 1992, and also from the 2017 to 2023. I hope you will find the information valuable. Regarding reclassification of the positions in my office, I am thrilled to share that the reclassification of roles within the clerk's office has been successfully completed. A big thank you to Amy and Megan for their guidance. Assistant Clerk Irene has been promoted to Deputy 2, and while Deputy Clerk Lena has advanced to Deputy Clerk 3. So the responsibilities associated with these positions are now clearly defined in the new job description. So congratulations to Irene and Lena for their well-deserved promotions. So Coffee with the Clerks, we are going to resume our peer-to-peer training session, and we'll continue on the topic of taking meeting minutes based on Robert's rules and highlighting the responsibilities of clerks and secretaries during board meetings. Another accomplishment of the clerk's office is that we automated the archiving of contracts and minutes using electronic forms. So we added the archiving electronically of meeting minutes of other boards and committees to Laserfish and making those available to the public. So liquor and marijuana licenses, I was present at the ABC board meeting on Tuesday. They conducted a hearing regarding the Southern Glaciers license, and even though the protest submitted by the Borough was rejected, the process helped to clarify the reasons for our objections concerning or addressing those concerns that we had regarding the license renewal. I emailed you the attorney's opinions from the Assistant Attorney General as well as the memorandum from the Council of Southern Glaciers. And then fiscal year budget, I completed the budget for the assembly and also for the clerk's office, and I have a meeting with the manager and the finance director on Wednesday. Assembly travel, if you would like to travel to Swansea, please let us know. Irene has emailed the travel arrangement form. And then records, we're working on a few more retention series revisions, and then we are also resuming our records coordinators meetings. Elections, it's going to be a very busy election year. We have 3 elections this year, so I started my calendar working also with the city clerk and the state. And boards and committees, so we need applicants for the Board of Equalization. And we're also going to hold training on April 23rd with the state assessor. APOC financial disclosure, I started seeing some of you filing those already, so great job. For those who haven't filed yet, please do so before the deadline of March 16 to avoid any penalties. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Nova? Just a reminder, I think Lena emailed us again as well. You can also do it through the My Alaska app, which is pretty snazzy. All right, moving on to Assembly Member comments. Mr. Gardner.
Thanks for the hard work, everybody. Can we please go home?
Mr. Johnson.
What he said.
Mr. Smiley.
My wife is an amazing person, and she has taken it upon herself to organize a party for my 80th birthday on Sunday at the brewery, and you are all invited.
You're here. Mr. Ames.
For myself personally, in the future, could we try to have a few less presentations in any one meeting? I personally start to get into information overload, and whoever is last on the list does not get the attention they possibly deserve. Other than that, no comment.
Thank you. I just appreciate everyone's effort tonight. Ms. Roberts.
Echoing that, thanks to everyone who presented tonight. Really gives us a better perspective when we're making decisions.
Mr. Woods.
No comment. Let's go home.
All righty. The mayor is out on leave, so with that, we will adjourn the work session at 9:39 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Maybe we need to do some open meeting act thing as well.